You're alone on a trail when you hear footsteps behind you that stop exactly when you stop. You're reviewing your hiking photos and discover someone who looks exactly like you standing behind you in every shot. You find a journal that describes your entire trip in perfect detail, written years before you planned it. Ending with a warning that you die tomorrow, the Appalachian Trail stretches over 2,000 miles through some of America's most remote wilderness, where cell service disappears and help is hours away. What happens out there stays out there, unless you make it back to tell the story. Tonight, the Haunted Fears horror family brings you 11 encounters from hikers who face something in those mountains that defied explanation. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could save your life on the trail. These are their stories, and after hearing them, you'll never look at a trail map the same way again. I reached Max Patch Summit at sunset expecting to share the moment with fellow hikers, but what I found instead made my blood run cold. 30 people stood completely motionless on that bald mountaintop, staring at absolutely nothing, and not one of them would acknowledge I existed. I need to tell you about October 14th, 2023, because what happened on Max Patch that evening still doesn't make sense to me, and I've replayed it in my mind thousands of times since. My name is Dax, and I'd been section hiking the Appalachian Trail through North Carolina for about a week. Max Patch was supposed to be the highlight of my trip, this incredible 4,729-foot bald mountain with 360-degree views that everyone raves about. I'd timed my arrival perfectly to catch sunset, hiking the last 2 miles with that excited energy you get when you know something beautiful is waiting. The trail broke through the tree line around 6:45 p.m., and I could see the rounded summit ahead, that famous grassy bald glowing golden in the late afternoon light. I noticed people up there, maybe 30 or 40 silhouettes scattered across the meadow, which wasn't surprising. Max Patch is one of the most popular spots on this section of the AT. What was surprising was how still they all were. As I climbed higher, closing the distance, I started to feel uneasy. Nobody was moving, not walking around, not taking photos, not sitting down to rest. They were just standing there, spread out across the summit in no particular pattern, all facing west toward the sunset. I told myself they were probably just enjoying the view, caught up in the moment. The sunset was spectacular after all, painting the layers of mountains in shades of purple and gold. But something felt wrong. I reached the summit and called out a greeting. "Beautiful evening, right?" Nobody responded. Nobody even turned around. I walked closer to the nearest person, a woman in a blue jacket standing about 20 feet away. "Hey, excuse me," I said louder this time. Nothing. She didn't move, didn't blink, just kept staring at the horizon. My heart started beating faster. I moved to another hiker, a man in his 60s with a gray beard and expensive-looking gear. I walked right up beside him, close enough to touch. "Sir, are you okay?" He didn't react. His eyes were open, fixed on the sunset, but they had this glazed quality, like he wasn't really seeing anything. I waved my hand in front of his face. Nothing. I started to panic. I pulled out my phone to call 911, but I had no service up here. I ran from person to person, checking for any sign of response. There were 32 of them, total, I counted. Men, women, different ages, different gear, all standing perfectly still, barely breathing, staring west. Some had backpacks on. Some had hiking poles still gripped in their hands. One woman had a camera hanging around her neck, the lens cap still on. The worst part was the silence. Max Patch is known for wind, but right then the air was completely still. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing getting more ragged as I moved through this crowd of human statues. I tried shaking one man's shoulder, and he was solid, real, warm to the touch, but he didn't respond at all. The sun was getting lower, maybe 15 minutes from setting completely. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't help these people, couldn't wake them up, couldn't call for help. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but what if they needed medical attention? What if leaving meant they'd die up here? I made a decision that probably saved my life. I went back down the trail about 50 yards to where the trees started, found a relatively flat spot, and set up my tent. I'd stay within sight of the summit, and if anything changed, I'd be close enough to help. I kept checking my phone every few minutes, hoping for even a flicker of service. As darkness fell, I could still see the silhouettes on the summit against the twilight sky. They hadn't moved, not an inch. I ate a cold dinner because I was too shaken to mess with my camp stove. Around 9 p.m., I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The stars were coming out, incredibly bright up here above 4,600 feet, and I could see by starlight that the figures were still there, still standing, still facing west, even though the sunset had been over for hours. I don't remember deciding to sleep. I was sitting in my tent watching the summit, and then suddenly I was opening my eyes to dawn light. My phone said 6:47 a.m., but that didn't make sense. My last clear memory was around 9:30 p.m. I'd lost 9 hours. I unzipped my tent with shaking hands and looked up at the summit. Empty. Completely empty. I scrambled out and hiked up as fast as I could. The grass showed no sign that 32 people had stood there all night. No trampled areas, no gear left behind, no footprints in the dew-covered grass. Nothing. I searched the entire summit, calling out, looking for any evidence they'd been real. I found nothing. It was like they'd never existed. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew they'd been there. I packed up my tent in a daze and started hiking north, away from Mac's Patch as fast as I could. About a mile up the trail, I passed a couple heading south, and I stopped them. "Did you camp near Mac's Patch last night?" I asked. They nodded. "Did you see anyone else up there, around sunset?" They looked at each other, then back at me. "No," the woman said. "We had the whole summit to ourselves. It was amazing, actually. Usually it's so crowded." "What time were you there?" I pressed. "We got there around 6:30, stayed until after dark." "Why?" "I was there at 6:45. They were there at 6:30. They saw nobody. But I saw 32 people. I hiked out that day instead of continuing my trip. When I got home, I checked my GPS tracker, the one that records your route and elevation. The data was corrupted for the time I was on Mac's Patch, just showing a straight flat line. But more disturbing was the timestamp. According to the device, I arrived at Mac's Patch at 6:47 p.m. and left at 6:47 a.m. But the time in between, those 12 hours, they just don't exist in the data file. It's like the device stopped recording time while I was there. I've gone through my photos from that evening. I took several pictures as I approached the summit, the last one at 6:43 p.m. showing the bald ahead with clear sky. The next photo in my camera roll is from 6:51 a.m. the next morning, my tent at sunrise. Everything from that evening is just gone. I know I didn't take photos of the people because I was too freaked out, but I should have photos of the sunset, the stars, something. The part that keeps me awake at night is this. I looked at my fitness tracker data later, the one that monitors your heart rate continuously. For those missing hours, from about 9:30 p.m. until 6:47 a.m., my heart rate shows as 0, flatlined, dead. But my step count continued. The device recorded me taking 347 steps during those hours when my heart wasn't beating. I've tried to research what happened, looking for similar stories from Mac's Patch. I found a few forum posts about people feeling weird up there, or having time feel distorted, but nothing like my experience. One post from 2019 mentioned someone camping there and waking up with several hours missing, but no details. I reported it to the ranger station. They took my information but seemed skeptical. One ranger mentioned that Mac's Patch has some unusual magnetic properties that can affect electronic devices, which might explain my GPS and tracker issues, but it doesn't explain the 32 people. It doesn't explain them standing motionless for hours. It doesn't explain them vanishing without a trace. Last month, I forced myself to go back. I needed to know if I'd imagined it, if maybe I'd had some kind of breakdown or hallucination. I hiked up in broad daylight, midday, when the summit was crawling with tourists and day hikers. Everything seemed normal. Beautiful views, happy people, nothing sinister. But as I was leaving, an older man stopped me near the parking lot. He'd watched me on the summit, he said. Noticed I kept looking around like I was searching for something. You saw them too, didn't you? He asked quietly. The Watchers. I felt my blood turn to ice. What? They're not always there, he said. Only certain nights. Usually around the equinox or solstice. They're watching something, waiting for something. I saw them in 1987. 32 people standing still as statues facing west. I was smart enough not to stay. He walked away before I could ask more questions, disappeared into the parking lot crowd. I tried to find him, but it was like he'd never been there. I don't hike alone anymore, and I'll never go back to Max Patch at sunset. Whatever I saw that night, whatever those 32 people were, or what they were watching, I don't want to know. Some questions aren't meant to be answered. Some experiences are meant to serve as warnings. If you're planning to hike Max Patch, go during the day. And if you reach the summit at sunset and see people standing perfectly still, staring at the horizon, don't stay to figure out why. Get off that mountain as fast as you can, because I lost 12 hours of my life up there, and I still don't know what happened during them. I just know that whatever it was, my body kept walking while my heart stopped beating, and that terrifies me more than anything I can explain. The screaming from inside that cave sounded so real, so desperate, that I couldn't just walk away. But when rescue finally arrived 3 hours later and found the cave empty, I realized I'd been talking to something that was never human at all. My name is Briar, and I need to tell you what happened to me on Blood Mountain in Georgia last April, because I still don't know what I encountered in that cave, and the not knowing eats at me every single day. I'm a fairly experienced hiker, done sections of the AT before, always solo because I like the peace and the challenge of relying only on myself. Blood Mountain was supposed to be a straightforward day hike, about 6 miles round trip to the summit at 4,458 feet. It's a popular trail, well marked, nothing too technical. I started early, around 7 a.m., hoping to beat the crowds and enjoy some solitude. The weather was perfect that morning, cool and crisp, with patches of fog still clinging to the lower elevations. I made good time on the ascent, passing a few other early hikers heading up. Around mile 2, the trail passes near an old stone shelter and some cave formations off to the side. I'd read about them in my guidebook, natural rock shelters that hikers sometimes use in emergencies, though they're not officially maintained. I was maybe 20 feet past the largest cave opening when I heard it. A scream. Not a startled yelp or a shout, but a full-throated scream of absolute terror and pain. It came from inside the cave, echoing out into the morning air. I froze, my heart hammering. The scream came again, and then dissolved into sobbing. "Help me," a voice called out, female, young, maybe early 20s. "Please, someone help me, I'm hurt. I can't move." Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't. Someone was injured in there, possibly dying. I pulled out my phone. No service, of course. I was still too low on the mountain. I stepped closer to the cave entrance, peering into the darkness. "Hello?" I called out. "I'm here. I'm going to help you. Can you tell me what happened?" "I fell," the voice sobbed. "I think my leg is broken. It's so dark. Please don't leave me. Please." The desperation in her voice broke my heart. I took a few steps into the cave, letting my eyes adjust. The entrance was large, maybe 8 feet high, but it narrowed quickly as it went back. I could see about 15 feet in before it got too dark to make out details. "I can't see you," I said. "How far back are you?" "I don't know," she cried. "It's so dark. I've been here all night. I'm so cold. Please help me. I turned on my phone's flashlight and ventured deeper. The cave went back further than I'd expected, the ceiling lowering as I went. At about 20 feet in, the passage seemed to split. Keep talking so I can find you, I called out. I'm here, the voice said, and it sounded like it was coming from the left passage. Please hurry. It hurts so much. Something felt wrong. Her voice was too clear, too close, like she was just around the corner. But as I moved toward the left passage, the voice seemed to move too, staying just ahead of me. Wait, I said, stopping. Can you see my light? Silence. Then, yes. Yes, I can see it. You're close, just a little further. But that didn't make sense. If she could see my light, I should be able to see her. The passage opened into a small chamber, maybe 10 feet across. Empty. Nobody there. Where are you? I called out, my voice shaking now. Right here, the voice said, and it was behind me now. I spun around. Nothing. My instincts finally overrode my desire to help. I backed toward the entrance, keeping my light pointed ahead. I'm going to get help, I said. I'm going to call rescue. Just hold on. No. The voice was different now, more desperate, almost angry. Don't leave me. You can't leave me here. I made it to the entrance and stumbled out into the daylight, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. The voice was still calling from inside, begging me not to go, but I ran. I ran up the trail until I got high enough to get 1 bar of service, and I called 911. The dispatcher took my information, my location, told me to stay on the line. I explained about the woman in the cave, about her broken leg, about how I couldn't reach her. The dispatcher said rescue was on the way, asked me to go back and try to keep the victim calm until they arrived. I didn't want to. Everything in me screamed not to go back to that cave. But what if she was real? What if someone was actually dying in there, and I'd abandoned them because I got spooked? I forced myself to walk back down to the cave entrance. Hello? I called from outside. Rescue is coming. They'll be here in about 2 hours. Can you hear me? I'm here, the voice answered, and I felt a wave of relief. She was still alive. Thank you for not leaving. Thank you so much. Can you come back in? I'm scared. I don't want to be alone. I'll stay right here at the entrance, I said. I'll keep talking to you. What's your name? Nellie, she said. My name is Nellie. Okay, Nellie. I'm Briar. You're going to be fine. Help is coming. Can you tell me what happened? How did you fall? She started talking, telling me she'd been hiking alone yesterday afternoon, had gone into the cave to explore, slipped on wet rocks, and fell. She'd been trapped ever since, her leg bent at a wrong angle, unable to move. The story made sense. It was plausible. But something about her voice bothered me. It never changed pitch or tone, never showed signs of pain except when she said the words, "It hurts." It was like she was reading from a script. I kept her talking, asking questions, trying to keep her conscious and alert like I'd learned in a wilderness first aid course years ago. She answered everything, but her responses felt off, like she was telling me what I wanted to hear rather than what was true. Nellie, when rescue gets here, they might need to splint your leg before moving you. Have you been able to feel your toes? Yes, she said. I can feel them. That's good. That's really good. Are you warm enough? Do you have a jacket? Yes, I'm warm enough. Every answer was just slightly wrong, just slightly too agreeable. Real people in pain are irritable, confused, their answers ramble. This was too perfect. About an hour in, I heard it. Another voice, much fainter, coming from deeper in the cave. Help me. Please help me. I'm hurt. I can't move. The exact same words, the exact same inflection as Nellie had used. Then another voice, and another overlapping, all saying the same thing in slightly different pitches. I felt my blood turn to ice. Nellie, I called out, my voice barely a whisper. The chorus of voices stopped. Silence. Then Nellie's voice came again, but this time it was different, deeper, older. Don't leave me. You promised you wouldn't leave me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was paralyzed with fear, standing at that cave entrance, listening to something pretend to be human. The voice changed again, morphing. It cycled through different ages, different genders, all begging me to come inside, to help, to not leave them alone. It knew I was listening. It knew I hadn't left. I don't know how long I stood there. Time felt strange, elastic. At some point, I heard voices from up the trail, real human voices, and I nearly collapsed with relief. 3 search and rescue personnel came down the trail with medical gear and technical equipment for cave rescue. I explained everything to them, about Nellie, about her broken leg, about how she was trapped deep in the cave. They looked at each other with expressions I couldn't read. "Ma'am," one of them said gently, "we know this cave. It's a local landmark. It's only about 12 feet deep. There's no passages, no chambers. It's basically just a rock overhang." "No," I insisted. "I was inside. It goes back at least 40 feet. There are passages. There's someone trapped in there." They humored me. They went inside with lights and cameras. I watched from the entrance as they illuminated every inch of that cave. They were right. It was shallow, just a curved indentation in the rock face, maybe 12 feet at its deepest point. No passages, no chambers, nowhere for a person to be trapped. "There's nobody here," the lead rescuer said. "There's never been anybody here." "But I heard her," I said, my voice breaking. "For over an hour I talked to her. She answered me. Her name was Nellie." One of the rescuers, an older woman with kind eyes, pulled me aside. "This cave has a history," she said quietly. "Every few months someone calls in a rescue because they hear someone trapped inside. Always the same story. Always a young woman who fell. We've searched it dozens of times. There's never anyone there." "What is it?" I asked. "What's doing this?" She shook her head. "We don't know. Some locals say the cave is haunted, that a girl died near here in the 1960s and her spirit lures people in. Others think it's some acoustic phenomenon, sound bouncing in weird ways. All I know is that you're not the first person to hear it, and you probably won't be the last, but nobody's ever actually gone deep into that cave and come back out." I looked at the cave entrance, that dark mouth in the rock face, and I understood. If I'd kept following that voice, kept going deeper, something would have happened. The cave would have been deeper. The passages would have existed, and I wouldn't have come back out. They gave me water, checked my vital signs, made sure I was okay. I hiked out with them, glancing back only once at that cave. In the shadows just inside the entrance, I swear I saw movement, like someone backing away into darkness that shouldn't exist. I reported everything to the Park Service. They filed it away with all the other reports. Apparently, there are dozens going back decades. They've studied the cave, brought in geologists and acoustic engineers. Nobody can explain it. The cave is exactly what it looks like, a shallow rock shelter with no unusual properties. But I know what I heard. I know I talked to something in there for over an hour. And I know that if those rescuers had arrived even 15 minutes later, I would have gone back inside. I would have followed that voice deeper and deeper, and the cave would have obliged by being exactly as deep as it needed to be to keep me following. I'll never hike Blood Mountain again, and if you do, and you pass that cave, and you hear someone crying for help inside, keep walking. Don't stop. Don't call rescue. Don't try to help, because whatever is in there doesn't need help. It needs you to come inside, and once you do, I don't think you're coming back out. I woke up at 3 a.m. to find fresh white trailblazes painted in a perfect circle around my tent, and my own map now showed a trail I never drew. Something had rewritten my reality while I slept, and it wanted me to follow. My name is Camden, and I'm a through hiker with over 500 miles of the Appalachian Trail under my belt. I've dealt with weather, wildlife, injuries, all the usual challenges, but what happened to me in Grayson Highlands, Virginia last September wasn't usual. It wasn't natural, and I still don't know if I escaped it or if it let me go. I'd been on the trail for 3 weeks, making decent time, averaging about 15 miles a day. Grayson Highlands was a section I'd been looking forward to, famous for the wild ponies that roam the high meadows. It's beautiful country, open balds with stunning views, and usually well-traveled. But I was hiking in late September, past peak season, so I had stretches of trail completely to myself. The strangeness started on day 22. I was following the white blazes that mark the AT, standard rectangular marks painted on trees and rocks every 100 yards or so. Around midday, I noticed a blaze that seemed off. It was in the right place, the right size, but something about it felt fresh. Too fresh. Like the paint was still wet. I touched it with my finger. Tacky, recently painted, maybe within the hour. That was weird but not alarming. Maintenance volunteers repaint blazes all the time. I kept hiking. A mile later, I saw another fresh one. Then another. I started paying closer attention. Every single blaze for the next 2 miles was freshly painted. But I hadn't passed any trail crew, hadn't seen another person all day. Who was painting these? Then I saw it. A blaze off the trail, about 20 feet into the woods to my left. Just one, bright white against a tree trunk, clearly visible. I checked my map. No trail there. No side trail, no connector, nothing. Just a blaze in the middle of the forest pointing at nothing. I ignored it and kept walking. A quarter-mile later, another off-trail blaze. Then another. They were appearing in the woods parallel to the trail, keeping pace with me. I stopped walking. The forest was silent. No wind, no birds, nothing. I decided to test something. I walked backwards 20 yards and checked a tree where I'd just seen a blaze. It was there, but now it looked old, weathered, like it had been there for years. I walked forward again, past it. When I looked back, it was fresh again, bright white, practically glowing. My hands started shaking. I pulled out my map, the paper one I'd been marking up with notes and camp locations for 3 weeks. Everything looked normal. The same trail I'd been following, the same notations in my handwriting. I took a photo of it with my phone, then kept hiking, faster now. The off-trail blazes continued, but I refused to acknowledge them. I focused on the main trail, on putting miles behind me. By evening, I reached a good camping spot near a stream, a flat area clearly used by other hikers before. I set up my tent quickly, ate a cold dinner, and crawled into my sleeping bag as soon as it got dark. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. but woke up at 3:14 a.m. to the sound of something moving outside my tent. Not animal movement, deliberate, methodical, footsteps circling my tent in a slow, steady rhythm. I lay perfectly still, barely breathing, listening. The footsteps made a complete circle, then stopped. Silence. I waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, nothing. Finally, I worked up the courage to unzip my tent and look outside. I shined my headlamp around the campsite. My blood turned to ice. There were white blazes painted on every tree surrounding my tent. 8 trees, 8 fresh blazes, forming a perfect circle about 15 feet in diameter, with my tent at the center. The paint was so fresh I could smell it, that sharp chemical odor of spray paint. I scrambled out of my tent, spinning around, trying to understand. Who did this? Why? I'd been sleeping for hours. Someone had come into my camp, circled my tent, painted 8 trees, and I hadn't heard anything except those footsteps minutes ago. Then I noticed something worse. Leading away from the circle, heading directly into the woods away from the trail, was a line of blazes. Fresh white rectangles painted on tree after tree, disappearing into the darkness. A trail that didn't exist was now marked as clearly as the AT itself. I pulled out my map with shaking hands. My heart stopped. There was a trail there now, a dotted line leading off the main AT, labeled in my own handwriting. Shortcut to next shelter, 3 miles. I knew every mark on that map. I'd made them all. But I had never drawn this line. I had never written those words. I grabbed my phone and found the photo I'd taken of the map yesterday. I zoomed in on this section. In the photo, there was no dotted line, no notation, just blank space. But when I looked at the physical map in my hands, it was there, clear as day, in ink that looked weeks old. Panic set in. I stuffed everything into my pack, not bothering to organize it, and got back on the main trail. I hiked by headlamp, not caring that it was 3:30 in the morning, not caring about anything except getting away from those blazes. But they followed me. Every few minutes I'd see one off trail, in the woods to my left, to my right, behind me. Always fresh, always bright, always watching. Because that's what it felt like they were watching me, like whatever was painting them was tracking my movement. As dawn broke, I came to a trail junction. The AT split here, with the main trail going right and a side trail going left to a popular overlook. According to my map, anyway. But now there was a third trail, going straight ahead, marked with fresh white blazes. A sign had been planted at the junction, wooden and weathered, like it had always been there. Grayson Peak alternate, 2.5 miles. There was no Grayson Peak alternate. I'd studied this section extensively. This trail didn't exist. But there was the sign. There were the blazes. There was the trail, a clear path through the woods. I chose right, the main AT. I practically ran. Behind me, I heard a sound that made my skin crawl, a spray paint can being shaken, that distinctive rattle of the mixing ball inside the can. I didn't look back. I just ran. For the next 6 hours, I hiked faster than I ever had. I didn't stop for water breaks, didn't stop to rest. The blazes kept appearing, more and more of them, creating imaginary trails that branched off in every direction. My map was filling with lines I didn't draw, notations I didn't write, all in my handwriting. Around noon, I saw other hikers for the first time in 2 days. A couple in their 50s taking a break on a rock outcropping. I practically collapsed in front of them. "Are you okay?" the woman asked, alarmed. "The blazes," I gasped. "Do you see them? All the extra blazes?" They looked confused. "What extra blazes?" "We've just been following the white blazes on the AT." "No, the ones in the woods, the fresh ones, the trails that aren't on the map." The man pulled out his map. "Son, there's only one trail here, the AT. Nothing else." I showed them my map, pointing at all the extra lines, the notations. They stared at it, then at each other. "There's nothing there," the woman said gently. "Your map just shows the regular trail." I looked down. She was right. My map was clean. No extra lines. No mysterious notations. Everything I'd seen was gone, like it had never existed. "You might be experiencing some dehydration," the man said. "Or exhaustion. Why don't you rest here for a bit?" I sat with them for 20 minutes, drinking water, eating some of their trail mix. They were kind, concerned. When I felt steadier, I thanked them and continued hiking. They were heading the opposite direction, back the way I'd come. I hiked for another 4 hours and made it to the next shelter, where 3 other hikers were already set up for the night. Real people, normal people, talking about normal trail things. I felt safer around them. I set up my tent, cooked a proper meal, tried to convince myself I'd imagined everything. That night, I checked my map one more time before sleeping. It was normal. Then I checked the photo on my phone from yesterday. Also normal. I was about to put the phone away when I noticed something in the photo metadata. The location data showed I'd taken it in the right place, at the right time. But there was another data point. Edited 3:47 a.m. I hadn't edited anything. I'd just taken the photo and left it. I scrolled through all my photos from the past 3 days. Every single one had the same notation. Edited 3:47 a.m. The exact time I'd woken up to find the blazes around my tent. My hands trembled as I opened my mapping app, the GPS one I used to track my daily mileage. According to the tracking data, I'd walked 47 miles. Yesterday, impossible. I'd done maybe 15. But the GPS didn't lie. The blue line showing my route went off-trail dozens of times, following paths that shouldn't exist, looping through the woods in elaborate patterns before returning to the AT. I have no memory of any of it. I hiked out of Grayson Highlands the next day and didn't stop until I was 2 sections away. I never saw another mysterious blaze after that morning. My map stayed normal. My GPS tracked correctly. Everything went back to the way it should be. But here's what haunts me. I finished my through hike 2 weeks later, all 2,190 miles. When I got my completion certificate and checked my total mileage on my GPS tracker, it showed 2,237 miles. I have 47 extra miles. I don't remember walking, following trails that don't exist, marked by blazes that weren't there. Something in Grayson Highlands wanted me to follow it. It tried to rewrite reality to make me follow. And for 47 miles, it succeeded. I just don't remember where it took me, or what I saw, or what I did during those hours. I still hike, but I never go alone anymore. And if I ever see a freshly painted blaze where it shouldn't be, I turn around immediately. Because whatever is out there painting trails into existence, whatever wants us to follow it into the woods, I don't think it's finished trying. I think it's still out there, still painting, still waiting for someone to finally follow all the way to wherever those false trails lead. And I pray I never find out where that is. I was looking through our sunset photos from McAfee Knob when I saw him in the background, standing right behind us, wearing the exact same jacket as my boyfriend. Neither of us saw anyone there when we took those pictures, and we were completely alone on that cliff. My name is Raina, and what happened at McAfee Knob last June has made me question everything I thought I understood about reality. My boyfriend Hassan and I had planned this trip for months. McAfee Knob is the most photographed spot on the entire Appalachian Trail, that iconic rock outcropping where you can get pictures that make it look like you're floating above the valley below. We'd seen 1,000 Instagram photos from that exact spot, and we wanted our own. We started the hike around 3 p.m., planning to reach the summit for golden hour. It's about an 8-mile round trip, not too difficult, well-maintained trail. The parking lot was packed when we arrived, which we expected. McAfee Knob is crazy popular, especially on nice weekends. We passed dozens of people on the way up, groups coming down after getting their photos, families with kids, couples like us. But by the time we reached the top around 5:30 p.m., the crowd had thinned significantly. Most people had gotten their shots and headed down before dark. Smart, considering the hike down can be tricky with a headlamp. We weren't worried, though. We had good lights, and Hassan had hiked this trail before. There were maybe 10 other people scattered around the summit area when we arrived, but they were all packing up to leave. Within 15 minutes, it was just us. Perfect. We'd have the spot to ourselves for sunset. Hassan set up his phone on a little tripod he'd brought specifically for this. We spent the next hour taking photos, trying different poses, different angles. The classic one where you're sitting on the edge with your legs dangling over the drop. The one where you're standing with your arms spread wide. Couple shots where we're holding hands, kissing, pointing at the view. We must have taken 60 pictures. The sunset was incredible, everything we'd hoped for. Orange and pink and purple bleeding across the sky, the valley spread out below us like a painting. We were laughing, joking around, completely absorbed in the moment and each other. At no point did I feel like anyone else was there. At no point did Hassan mention seeing another person. We stayed until the lights started to fade, then packed up and hiked down by headlamp. It took us about 2 hours to get back to the car. We grabbed dinner at a diner in town, drove back to our Airbnb, and crashed. Perfect day, perfect trip. The next morning over breakfast, I started going through the photos on Hassan's phone, picking out the best ones to post. That's when I saw it. In the first photo, one of Hassan sitting on the rock ledge with the sunset behind him, there was someone standing in the background. A man, maybe 20 feet behind Hassan, just standing there, facing the camera. I zoomed in. He was wearing a dark blue jacket, jeans, hiking boots. The exact same dark blue North Face jacket Hassan was wearing in the photo. "Babe," I said slowly, "who is this?" Hassan looked over my shoulder. "Who's who?" "This guy, behind you." I pointed. He took the phone, squinted at it. "I don't remember anyone being there." "Huh. Maybe someone walked into the frame and we didn't notice." But here's the thing. I was the one who triggered that photo from where I was standing off to the side. I was looking directly at the scene. There was no one there. I would have seen them. I swiped to the next photo, one of me sitting on the ledge. The man was in that one too, but now he was closer, maybe 15 feet behind me, still wearing that blue jacket, still facing the camera. His face was slightly blurred, like he'd moved just as the shutter clicked. Photo after photo, he was there. Sometimes behind me, sometimes behind Hassan, sometimes off to the side. And in every single photo, he was wearing the same outfit as whichever one of us was the main subject. When Hassan was the focus, the figure wore Hassan's blue jacket and jeans. When I was the focus, the figure was wearing my red hoodie and black leggings. "This is insane," Hassan said, his voice tight. "This is actually insane. I never saw this person, not once." We went through all 63 photos we'd taken at the summit. The figure appeared in 47 of them. In the first ones, he was far in the background. With each subsequent photo, he got closer. In the final photo we'd taken, the one right before we packed up to leave, he was standing directly behind us. We'd set the timer for a selfie-style shot of both of us, and he was there, right between us, close enough that his arms were almost touching our shoulders. His face was clearer in that last photo, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. He looked like Hassan. Not exactly like Hassan, but similar. Same build, same skin tone, same general features, like a slightly off version of Hassan, a copy that wasn't quite right. I pulled up the photos where I was the main subject. In those, the figure looked like me. Same height, same hair color, same build. Always just blurred enough that you couldn't see details clearly, but unmistakably similar to whichever one of us was in focus. Hassan was pale, his hands shaking. "We need to delete these." "Wait," I said. "Let me check something first." I opened Instagram and searched the McAfee knob location tag. Hundreds of photos, all from that same spot. I started scrolling through recent ones from the past few weeks, and there it was, a couple's photo from 5 days before our visit. Behind them, slightly out of focus, a figure wearing the same outfit as the boyfriend. I clicked on another photo, from a different couple 2 weeks ago. Same thing, a figure in the background matching one of the people in the photo. I spent 2 hours going through photos. I found it in dozens of them, always the same pattern, always matching one person in the photo, always in the background, always slightly out of focus. Some photographers had clearly noticed and mentioned it in their captions. "Who photobombed us, LOL?" Or, "Did anyone else see this person? We were totally alone." But most people hadn't noticed. The figure blended in just enough, was far enough in the background, that unless you were really looking, you'd miss it. I found one comment thread that made my blood run cold. A woman had posted a photo from McAfee Knob and asked if anyone knew who the person in the background was. Another commenter had replied, "That's the McAfee double. Everyone gets one in their photos. Local legend says it's the ghost of a hiker who fell from the cliff in the 70s. Now it copies people and appears in their photos. Creepy, but harmless." Harmless. I wanted to believe that. But then I found a blog post from a paranormal investigator who'd researched the phenomenon. According to their findings, the figure had been appearing in photos since digital cameras became common in the early 2000s. Never in film photos from before that, only digital. They'd interviewed dozens of people who'd photographed it. Most said the same thing we experienced. Never saw anyone there in person, only noticed the figure later when reviewing photos. But 3 people reported something else. They said that in the weeks after their visit to McAfee Knob, they'd started seeing their double in other places. In crowds, on security cameras, in the background of other people's photos they happened to be in. Always just at the edge of visibility, always watching. And one person, a woman named Jennifer, had reported that 6 months after visiting McAfee Knob, her double had shown up at her house. Her neighbor had seen it, had waved to it thinking it was her. Her own mother had opened the door to it, had spoken to it for 5 minutes before realizing something was wrong about her daughter's speech patterns and mannerisms. The blog post ended with a warning. If you photograph the double at McAfee Knob, and if it appears in multiple photos getting progressively closer, delete all copies immediately. Do not post them online. Do not share them. The act of sharing spreads its reach. Hassan and I sat in silence after reading that. We took 47 photos with it in them, I whispered, and in the last one it was right between us. We haven't shared any of them, Hassan said. We can delete everything right now. But before we could, Hassan's phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. His friend Chris had tagged him in a photo with the caption, "Ran into these guys at the Airbnb. Small world." I opened the notification with dread I couldn't explain. It was a photo Chris had taken in the Airbnb's common area last night after we'd gotten back. Hassan and I were in the background, heading up the stairs to our room. And between us, clearly visible, was a figure wearing Hassan's blue jacket. The same figure from McAfee Knob had followed us to the Airbnb. "We didn't see Chris last night," Hassan said quietly. We went straight to our room. I zoomed in on the photo. The figure between us had its hand on Hassan's shoulder, like it was guiding him, or claiming him. We deleted every photo from McAfee Knob immediately. We made Hassan's friend delete his post, told him there was a stranger in the photo, and we were worried about being stalked. He thought we were being paranoid, but he deleted it. We cut our trip short and drove home that afternoon. The entire drive, Hassan kept checking the rearview mirror, convinced he was seeing that blue jacket in cars behind us. For 3 weeks, everything seemed normal. We'd convinced ourselves we'd overreacted, that it was just a weird photographic glitch or someone pulling an elaborate prank. Then Hassan's coworker mentioned seeing him at the coffee shop downtown at 8 a.m. last Tuesday. Hassan had been in a meeting at work at 8 a.m. last Tuesday. His coworker insisted it was him, same jacket, same walk, even made eye contact and waved. But the person had just stared and walked away. My sister saw me at the grocery store on Thursday evening. I was at home, on a work call. My laptop logs prove it. She said I smiled at her, but didn't say anything, just stood in the aisle watching her shop. Last week, Hassan's building security footage caught someone entering his apartment building using his key fob. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. Hassan was asleep in his bed, his key fob on his nightstand. The footage shows a figure in Hassan's blue jacket entering the building, walking to the elevator, pressing the button for Hassan's floor. But the camera inside the elevator malfunctioned right then, and there's no footage of whether it reached his floor or where it went. We're documenting everything now, every sighting, every report from people who say they've seen us when we weren't there. There are dozens now. Our doubles are appearing more frequently, getting bolder, being seen in places closer and closer to our actual homes. We've tried going back to McAfee Knob to, I don't know, confront it somehow, demand it leave us alone, but every time we plan a trip, something stops us. A sudden illness, car trouble, weather so severe the trail closes. It's like something doesn't want us going back. I've researched everything I can find. The earliest mention of the McAfee double I can locate is from 2003, right when camera phones were becoming popular. Before that, nothing. Whatever this is, it's connected to digital photography somehow. It exists in the space between the lens and the sensor, or in the data that creates the image. And once it photographs you, it has you. It can recreate you. Last night, I got a text from my mother. "Lovely seeing you for lunch today, sweetheart. We should do it again soon." I haven't seen my mother in 3 weeks. I called her immediately. She insisted I'd been there, at her house, for 2 hours. We'd had soup and talked about my job. She described my outfit perfectly, described mannerisms only I would have, mentioned a childhood story only our family knows. But I wasn't there. My double was. And it's good enough to fool my own mother. I don't know what it wants. I don't know what happens if it keeps getting stronger, keeps appearing more solidly in our lives. I'm terrified that one day Hassan will come home and I'll be there, but it won't really be me. Or I'll meet Hassan for dinner and realize halfway through the meal that I'm sitting across from something wearing his face. If you're planning to visit McAfee Knob, please listen to me. Take your photos during the day when it's crowded. Don't stay for sunset when you're alone. And before you leave the summit, check every single photo you took. If there's someone in the background who wasn't there, someone wearing your clothes or your companion's clothes, delete those photos immediately. All copies, all backups, everything. Because once it's in your photos, it's in your life. And it doesn't just want to be seen, it wants to replace you. And I think eventually it will. The journal looked ancient, leather-bound, and weather-stained, sitting on the shelter's wooden bench like it had been waiting for me. When I opened it and started reading, my hands went numb. Every word described my trip in perfect detail, written 3 years before I'd even planned it. My name is Wesley, and I'm a data analyst from Nashville, the kind of person who plans everything down to the mile. I'd been preparing for this section hike through the Great Smoky Mountains for 8 months. I had spreadsheets for my gear weight, detailed itineraries, backup plans for bad weather. I'm not the kind of person who believes in fate or destiny or anything that can't be measured and predicted. But what I found at Spence Field Shelter on my 4th day out there shook every rational belief I'd built my life on. The hike had been perfect up until that point. I'd started at Clingman's Dome and was working my way northeast along the AT, hitting all the shelters I'd researched. Spence Field was exactly where I'd planned to spend my 4th night, a 3-sided wooden structure at about 4,900 feet elevation, known for incredible sunrise views over the mountains. I arrived around 4 p.m., plenty of time to set up and cook dinner before dark. The shelter was empty when I got there, which was nice. I'd had it to myself the previous 2 nights too. Through hikers were sparse this late in October, and day hikers didn't usually make it this far out. I dropped my pack on the wooden sleeping platform and did my usual routine. Hang my food bag, set up my sleeping pad, organize my gear. That's when I noticed the journal. It was tucked in the corner of the shelter, partially hidden behind one of the support beams. Most AT shelters have journals, notebooks where hikers leave entries about their experiences, advice for future hikers, trail conditions, sometimes just random thoughts. I always enjoyed reading them, getting glimpses into other people's journeys. This one was different. The cover was dark leather, cracked with age, not the cheap spiral notebook you usually found. No title, no marking. I picked it up carefully. It felt heavy, substantial. When I opened to the first page, I saw a date written in neat handwriting, October 15th, 2020, 3 years ago, almost to the day. The first entry began. Day 1. Started at Clingman's Dome at 8:47 a.m. Weather clear, temperature 52 degrees at start. Made it to Double Spring Gap Shelter by 3:30 p.m. 11.2 miles. Left knee started bothering me around mile 8. My stomach tightened. I'd started at Clingman's Dome at 8:47 a.m. 4 days ago. The weather had been clear, 52 degrees. My left knee had started bothering me around mile 8. I'd made it to Double Spring Gap Shelter at 3:30 p.m., exactly 11.2 miles. I flipped to the next entry, my hands shaking. Day 2. Left Double Spring at 7:15 a.m. Saw a black bear about a mile out, stayed on the trail, gave me space, no issues. Made it to Seiler's Bald Shelter, 9.8 miles. Incredible sunset, worth the climb. Ate the beef stroganoff meal, definitely better than the chicken teriyaki. I'd left Double Spring at 7:15 a.m. I'd seen a black bear about a mile out, had the exact same non-encounter. Made it to Seiler's Bald, 9.8 miles. The sunset had been incredible, And I'd eaten the beef stroganoff freeze-dried meal thinking the same thing about it being better than the chicken teriyaki I'd had the night before. This wasn't possible. This was my trip, my exact trip described in detail 3 years before I'd planned it. I kept reading, unable to stop even though every word made my skin crawl. Day 3. Woke up thinking about calling it quits. Knee worse. Took 2 ibuprofen and decided to push through. Made it to Derrick Knob Shelter. 10.4 miles. Met a couple from Ohio heading south. They gave me some extra athletic tape for my knee. Helped a lot. That was yesterday. I'd woken up thinking about calling it quits because of my knee. I'd taken 2 ibuprofen and pushed through to Derrick Knob. I'd met a couple from Ohio who gave me athletic tape. This was impossible. This was my life, my thoughts, my exact experiences. The Day 4 entry made me stop breathing. Day 4. Made it to Spence Field Shelter around 4 p.m., 12.1 miles. Found this journal in the shelter. Reading it now. Every word describes my trip perfectly. Written 3 years ago by someone named Marcus. He found the journal too, written 3 years before. His trip by someone named David. They both wrote that they found the journal, that it described their trips perfectly, that the entries end on Day 5 with a warning. My name wasn't Marcus or David, but I was reading about someone else in an infinite regression that made my head spin. I flipped forward frantically, looking for the Day 5 entry, the warning. Day 5. I shouldn't have stayed at Spence Field. I should have read ahead in the journal before I went to sleep. If you're reading this, if your trip matches mine so far, leave now. Don't stay here tonight. Don't wait for morning. It comes on Day 5. It comes at 3:47 a.m. I can hear it outside right now, circling the shelter. It sounds like footsteps, but the pattern is wrong. Too many steps, too many feet. I thought I could change things, thought I could be ready for it. But you can't be ready for something that already knows every move you're going to make. It's here because I'm here, because this is where I was supposed to be, where the journal said I would be. If you're on Day 4, you're already locked in. Your gear is arranged exactly how mine was. You made the same meals. You took the same breaks. You are me, just shifted forward in time. And tomorrow at 3:47 a.m., you'll hear what I'm hearing now. The footsteps will stop. The shelter will get cold. So cold you'll see your breath, even though it's not that cold out. And then, the entry ended mid-sentence, just stopped. The rest of the page was blank. The rest of the journal was blank. My heart was hammering. I checked my watch, 4:23 p.m. I looked at my gear, at how I'd arranged everything. I checked my food bag, beef stroganoff for tonight, just like the journal said. I pulled out my detailed itinerary, the one I'd spent months perfecting. Tomorrow, I was supposed to hike to Molly's Ridge Shelter, but if I left now, hiked out tonight. I started packing frantically, shoving things into my backpack without my usual careful organization. I had to get out of here. I had to break the pattern. If I wasn't here on Day 5, if I changed the plan, maybe. Then I stopped. Looked at the journal again, picked it up with trembling hands and flipped through the blank pages more carefully. On the very last page, almost invisible in the fading light, was one more entry. Written in different handwriting, much older, the ink faded to brown. To whoever finds this, I tried to leave on Day 4. Made it about 2 miles down the trail before I realized I'd left the journal behind. Something made me come back for it. Not something external. Something inside me. Some compulsion I couldn't explain. When I got back to the shelter, it was dark. I'd lost 3 hours somehow, but it felt like I'd only been gone 20 minutes. I checked my GPS. It showed I'd walked 2.3 miles in a perfect circle. I never left the area around the shelter. That's when I understood. We don't choose to stay. The pattern ensures we stay. You'll try to leave, too. You'll think you're being smart, breaking free, but you'll come back. There's always a reason. You'll forget something. You'll doubt yourself. You'll get turned around. And you'll end up right back here, right where you're supposed to be. I'm writing this at 3:30 a.m. on Day 5. I can hear it now, the footsteps that aren't footsteps. 17 minutes until 3:47. I don't know what happens then, but I know this. Find my driver's license in the bottom of the journal binding. Check the name and photo, then understand what you're really looking at. My hand shook as I examined the journal's binding. There was a small tear in the leather along the spine. I worked my finger into it and felt something plastic. A driver's license, just like the entry said. I pulled it out. Tennessee license. The photo showed a man in his 30s, dark hair, glasses. The name, Wesley Morrison. My name, my face, my license. But the issue date was 2017. I'd gotten my current license in 2022. This was my license from 8 years ago, the one I'd lost on a camping trip to the Smokies. I'd reported it lost, gotten a replacement. And here it was, in a journal describing my current trip, written 3 years before I'd planned it. I looked at my current driver's license in my wallet. Same photo, same name, issue date 2022. I looked at the old one from the journal. Same photo, same name, issue date 2017. The same photo. But I'd changed my appearance since 2017. Grew a beard, got different glasses. The photo in my current license looked different from my 2017 one, except they were identical. Both licenses showed me with my current beard, my current glasses. The 2017 license showed a future version of me that shouldn't have existed yet. I checked my phone. No service, but the timestamp worked. 4:51 p.m. I looked at my GPS device. Same time. I looked at my watch. 7:33 p.m. 3 different times. All 3 devices working perfectly. No errors. All fully charged. That's when I knew I wasn't leaving. Time worked differently here. Or I worked differently in time. The journal was right. I was just another iteration, another version of the same trip playing out again and again. Marcus had found David's journal. David had found someone else's. Now I'd found theirs. And 3 years from now, if I wrote my experience in this journal, someone else would find it and read their own trip described in perfect detail. I'm writing this now at 3:39 a.m. It's day 5. 8 minutes until 3:47. I can hear them outside, the footsteps that aren't quite right. Too many of them, moving in patterns that don't match any animal I know. The shelter's getting colder. I can see my breath. I'm going to leave this journal here with my entry added. I'm going to put my current driver's license in the binding, next to the 2017 one that shouldn't exist. Maybe the next person will understand faster than I did. Maybe they'll figure out how to break free. But I don't think they will. Because as I sit here writing this, I can feel it. The certainty that in 3 years, someone named Wesley will start a hike at Clingman's Dome at exactly 8:47 a.m. Their left knee will hurt at mile 8. They'll see a black bear. They'll make it to Spence Field on day 4 at 4 p.m. And they'll find this journal. It's 3:46 a.m. now, 1 minute left. The footsteps have stopped. Whatever's out there is at the shelter entrance. I can't see it, but I can feel it. Something waiting. Something that's been waiting for me specifically. That knew I would be here because I was always going to be here. If you're reading this and your trip matches mine, you're already trapped in the pattern. You can't leave. You won't leave. And at 3:47 a.m. on day 5, you'll understand why. It's here. The storm hit so suddenly that I didn't even have time to reach for my rain gear before the world turned gray and cold. When the fog finally cleared 20 minutes later, I was standing in front of a ranger station that my map insisted didn't exist, and the ranger who saved my life had a uniform from 1987. I'm Gustavo, and I've been hiking sections of the Appalachian Trail for 5 years now, documenting everything for my outdoor blog. I'm meticulous about research. I study maps, read trail reports, check weather forecasts obsessively. So when I planned my solo hike through the Roan Mountain area on the Tennessee-North Carolina border, I knew every shelter, every water source, every landmark within a 20-mile radius. What I didn't know was that some places on the trail exist outside the boundaries of normal geography, and some people you meet have been waiting decades for someone to find them. It was mid-September, perfect hiking weather. I'd started early that morning from Carver's Gap, planning to traverse the high balds and camp near Roan High Knob. The forecast called for clear skies all day, maybe some clouds rolling in by evening. Nothing concerning. The balds up there are spectacular. Open grassy meadows above 6,000 feet with 360-degree views. On a clear day, you can see into 5 states. I made good time through the morning, stopping at Round Bald and Jane Bald for photos. The views were incredible, exactly what I'd hoped for. By noon, I was approaching Grassy Ridge, the longest stretch of grassy bald on the entire AT. That's when the weather changed. One moment, I was walking through sunshine with a light breeze. The next, dark clouds materialized out of nowhere, rolling across the mountains like a tsunami. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Then the fog came, so thick and sudden it was like someone had thrown a wet blanket over the entire mountain. I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The wind picked up, howling across the exposed ridge. I fumbled for my rain jacket, but the fog was so disorienting I couldn't get my bearings. The trail markers disappeared into the white void. I knew I needed to get off the exposed ridge, find some tree cover, but I couldn't tell which direction was which. I pulled out my compass, trying to orient myself, but my hands were shaking from the sudden cold. That's when I saw it, a structure emerging from the fog ahead. A building. My first thought was relief, shelter, safety. But as I got closer, my relief turned to confusion. It was a ranger station, a small wooden building with a peaked roof, a covered porch, a sign that read, Roan Mountain Ranger Station, U.S. Forest Service. There was smoke coming from a chimney, a light glowing in the window. This made no sense. I'd studied my maps for weeks. There was no ranger station up here. The nearest one was miles away, at the base of the mountain. But here it was, solid and real, with warm light spilling from the windows and a thin trail of smoke rising into the fog. I didn't have time to question it. The cold was biting through my layers now, and I was starting to shiver uncontrollably. I climbed the 3 wooden steps to the porch and knocked on the door. It opened almost immediately. A man stood there, maybe 50 years old, wearing a ranger uniform, the classic olive green with patches and badges. He had kind eyes, graying hair, a neatly trimmed beard. Come in, he said immediately, stepping aside. Caught in the storm, huh? They come up fast up here. You're lucky you found the station. I stepped inside, grateful for the warmth. There was a wood stove in the corner, crackling with fire. The interior looked like a backcountry ranger station should. Wooden walls covered with maps, a desk with paperwork, shelves of supplies, a radio setup, a small cot in one corner. Everything looked well-maintained, but somehow dated, like the building had been frozen in time. I'm Ranger Mitchell, the man said, closing the door behind me. Let me get you some coffee. You look half frozen. Thank you, I managed through chattering teeth. I'm Gustavo. I didn't know there was a station up here. It's not on my map. He poured coffee from a thermos into a metal cup and handed it to me. Most folks don't know about it. We're a monitoring station, pretty remote. Been here since the 60s. Mainly weather observation and trail maintenance coordination. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, feeling sensation returning to my fingers. The fog came out of nowhere. Yeah, it does that up here. You were smart to find shelter. People get disoriented in these conditions, wander off trail. We've had to do searches. He gestured to a chair by the stove. Sit. Warm up. The fog should clear in an hour or so. Happens fast as it comes. I sat, studying him more carefully. There was something slightly off about him, though I couldn't pinpoint what. His uniform looked authentic, but oddly pristine for someone working in the backcountry. The patches were crisp, the fabric unworn. You up here alone? I asked. Yeah, just me this season. Used to have a partner, but budget cuts, you know. They keep talking about closing this station down, but someone needs to monitor conditions up here. He sat at his desk, shuffling through some papers. You're doing the AT section hiking. Started at Carver's Gap this morning, heading for Roan High Knob. Good plan. Beautiful stretch. You picked a good time. Past the summer crowds before it gets too cold. He pulled out a trail map, spreading it on the desk. When this fog clears, you'll want to head northeast here. Should take you about 2 hours to the knob. I pulled out my own map to compare. That's when I noticed it. His map looked older, the paper yellowed, the printing style different. And there were trails marked on his map that weren't on mine, and vice versa. Your map looks vintage, I said carefully. He glanced at it, smiled. Yeah, I guess it is. Had. This one since I started working here. Never saw a need to replace it. Mountains don't move much. I looked around the station more carefully now, that uneasy feeling growing. The radio equipment looked old, like 1980s technology. The calendar on the wall showed September 1987. The newspapers stacked on a shelf had dates from 1987. Even the coffee can on the shelf was a vintage design I recognized from my childhood. Ranger Mitchell, I said slowly. What year is it? He looked at me strangely. What kind of question is that? It's 1987, September 23rd, 1987. My heart started pounding. Sir, it's 2023, September 23rd, 2023. He stared at me for a long moment, then laughed. Son, you must have hit your head in that fog. It's 1987. Look at the calendar if you don't believe me. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking. This is my phone. Look at the date. He took it, turning it over in his hands with fascination. What kind of radio is this? I've never seen anything like it. It's not a radio, it's a phone, a smartphone. Look at the screen. It shows the date, September 23rd, 2023. He touched the screen, which lit up. His face went pale. He set the phone down carefully on the desk, backing away from it like it might bite him. This isn't possible, he whispered. What's happening here? I asked. Where are we, really? He sat down heavily in his chair, looking suddenly older. The fog. It's the fog. Every few years, someone finds the station when they shouldn't be able to. Someone from later. From the future. What do you mean? I've been here since 1985, he said quietly. It's always 1987 here. Always September 23rd, 1987, the day the fog came and never left. I felt the room spinning. That's impossible. You're here, aren't you? You found a station that doesn't exist on your maps. You're drinking coffee with a man who should be... He trailed off doing the math. I'd be 90 years old now, if I'm still alive out there. What happened to you? Why are you stuck here? He stood, walked to the window. Outside, the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. I was stationed here legitimately back then. Alone, like I said. The fog came on September 23rd, 1987, just like today. But it didn't clear. Days passed, but it stayed. I tried to hike out, but I kept ending up back here. The fog wouldn't let me leave. I've been here ever since, living the same day over and over. Except, it's not quite the same. People like you show up sometimes. Lost hikers from the future, caught in the fog. How many? You're the fifth. First one was in 1992, according to her date anyway. For me, it had been a few hours since the fog came. Next was 1998, then 2007, then 2015, now you. Every time they appear during the fog, we talk, the fog clears, and they leave. I stay. Why? Why are you stuck? I don't know. Maybe because I was here when it happened. Maybe because this is my station, my post. A ranger never abandons his post. He smiled sadly. Or maybe there's no reason. Maybe some fogs are just hungry and they caught me. I looked out the window. The fog was starting to thin, wisps of it pulling apart. It's clearing. Yeah, like clockwork. You'll be able to leave soon. He walked to a filing cabinet, pulled out a folder. Do me a favor. If you make it out, when you make it out, check the records. See if there was a Ranger Thomas Mitchell stationed at Roan Mountain. See if they know what happened to me. I took the folder. Inside were personal documents, photos, letters, a life preserved in paper. I'll find out, I promised, but maybe you can leave now. Maybe with me, we can both walk out." He shook his head. "I've tried. With every person who's found this place. I can walk out the door, but I never make it far. The fog takes me back. But you're not stuck. You just got caught in it temporarily. When it clears, follow your compass northeast. Don't look back at the station. Just keep walking." The fog outside was almost gone now, blue sky visible through the thinning white. I could see the mountains again, the trail markers reappearing. "Thank you," I said. "For the shelter, for the coffee, for—" "Just tell my story," he interrupted. "Let someone know Thomas Mitchell is still here, still doing his job, still waiting for the fog to finally let him go home." I put the folder in my pack, shook his hand. It felt real, solid, warm. He walked me to the door. "Straight northeast," he reminded me. "Don't look back." I stepped onto the porch. The air was clear now, crisp and cold and real. I took 3 steps down to the trail, pulled out my compass, oriented myself. Started walking northeast toward Roan High Knob. Behind me, I heard the door close. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to look back at the impossible station one more time. But I remembered his words. Don't look back. I walked for 10 minutes, following my compass, until I reached a familiar trail marker. I was back on the AT proper, exactly where I should be. I stopped, finally allowed myself to turn around. There was nothing behind me but forest. No building, no clearing, no sign that anything had ever been there. I hiked back along my own footprints in the soft ground. They ended at a spot where the forest was thick and untouched. No ranger station, no porch, no chimney smoke. I pulled out the folder from my pack. It was still there, still real. Photos of a young ranger in a 1980s uniform. Letters addressed to Thomas Mitchell. A badge number. A date of assignment. March 1985, Roan Mountain Station. When I got home 3 days later, I started researching. I contacted the Forest Service, requested records. It took weeks, but they finally sent me a file. Ranger Thomas Mitchell, assigned to Roan Mountain High Altitude Monitoring Station, March 1985. Last radio contact September 23, 1987. He'd reported unusual fog conditions, said he was staying at the station until it cleared. He was never heard from again. Search parties found the station empty, no sign of him. The station was decommissioned in 1989, then demolished in 1991. Official conclusion: lost in the mountains, presumed dead after extensive search efforts failed. But I had his folder. I had his photos. I had his story. And I have a warning. If you're hiking the Roan Mountain Balds and a sudden fog rolls in, if you find a ranger station that isn't on any map, go inside if you must. Accept the shelter. Warm yourself by the fire. Drink the coffee. But when the fog clears, leave immediately. Walk northeast. And whatever you do, don't look back. 'Cause Ranger Thomas Mitchell is still there, still on duty, still waiting in a September afternoon that never ends. And the fog is always hungry for more. The footsteps behind me matched my pace exactly for 8 miles through the fog, stopping when I stopped, running when I ran. When I finally looked at the photos I'd been taking blindly over my shoulder, I saw it was only 3 feet behind me in the last shot, even though the sound never got any closer. My name is McKenna, and I'm not someone who scares easily. I grew up camping, hiking, spending weeks in the backcountry with my family. I've encountered bears, gotten lost, hiked through storms. I know how to handle myself in the wilderness. But what followed me through the fog near Clingman's Dome in the Great Smoky Mountains last October wasn't wildlife, wasn't human, and didn't follow any rules I understood. I'd planned a solo overnight trip starting at the Clingman's Dome parking area and hiking the AT section toward Double Spring Gap. It was late October, past peak leaf season, so I expected solitude. The forecast showed possible morning fog at the higher elevations, but nothing severe. I started at dawn, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and orange from the observation tower at Clingman's Dome. the highest point on the entire Appalachian Trail at 6,643 feet. By the time I hit the trail around 7 a.m., the fog was rolling in, not unusual for this elevation. Clingman's Dome is famous for fog. The Cherokee called these mountains Shaconage, place of blue smoke, because of the perpetual mist. I'd hiked in fog before. It makes things quieter, more intimate, like the mountain is sharing secrets with you alone. The first hour was peaceful. The trail was well marked, and I had my GPS running on my phone as backup. The fog was thick enough that I could only see about 20 feet ahead, but I wasn't worried. I knew this section, had hiked it twice before in clear weather. That's when I heard the footsteps. At first, I thought it was another hiker behind me. The sound was rhythmic, steady, matching my pace. Boots on packed earth, the swish of pants legs, the occasional snap of a twig. I slowed down, expecting them to either call out a greeting or pass me. The footsteps slowed too. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I turned around, peering into the fog. "Hello?" My voice sounded muffled, absorbed by the mist. No response. I could see maybe 15 feet back down the trail. Nothing. Nobody there. I started walking again. The footsteps resumed, exactly matching my rhythm. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. Same cadence, same weight, like someone was deliberately synchronizing with me. "Hello?" I called again, louder. "I can hear you back there." Silence. Just my own breathing and the soft patter of condensation dripping from trees. Then the footsteps started again, unprompted this time. I wasn't moving, but the steps continued getting closer. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. Then they stopped. My heart was pounding now. This isn't funny. If you're trying to scare me, it's working. Just pass me or let me know you're there. Nothing. I pulled out my phone, checked the GPS. I was exactly where I should be, making good time. Signal was weak but present. I took a photo back down the trail just to see if the camera could pick up what my eyes couldn't in the fog. The photo showed empty trail, gray mist, nothing else. I kept hiking, faster now. The footsteps kept pace. Every time I sped up, they sped up. Every time I slowed, they slowed. It was like having a shadow made of sound. After another mile, I decided to test something. I stopped abruptly, mid-stride. The footsteps continued for 3 more steps before stopping. Like whoever, whatever, was following me had momentum they couldn't immediately control. That detail terrified me more than anything else. It meant this was real, not an echo, not my imagination, not some acoustic trick of the fog. Something was actually behind me, tracking my movement, trying to match it, but not quite perfectly. I started running. Not all-out panic, but a steady jog as fast as I could safely manage on the rocky trail. Behind me, the footsteps ran too. But now I could hear more detail. Too many steps. Not left, right, like a person running. More like left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, overlapping. Like multiple sets of feet all trying to mimic one person's gait. I ran for maybe half a mile before I had to stop, gasping for air at this elevation. The footsteps stopped too, but I heard something else. Breathing. Ragged, wet breathing, like someone, or several someones, were also out of breath. But the breathing didn't sound human. The rhythm was wrong, the texture wrong, like air being pushed through something not designed for breathing. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and switched to camera mode. Without turning around, I held the phone over my shoulder and took a photo behind me. Then another. Then another. I took 12 photos total, holding the phone at different angles, trying to capture whatever was there. I didn't look at them yet. I just kept walking, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. The footsteps followed, always 20 feet back, based on the sound. Never closer, never farther. Perfectly consistent. After another mile, I came to a small clearing where the fog thinned slightly. I could see maybe 30 feet now. I spun around quickly, hoping to catch a glimpse. Nothing. Empty trail. But the footsteps didn't stop when I stopped. They continued, coming toward me, and now I could see the ground where the sound was coming from. The leaves weren't moving. The dirt wasn't disturbing. The sound of footsteps was happening without any visible cause. Invisible steps getting closer. I backed away, stumbling over a root, almost falling. The footsteps stopped about 10 feet from where I stood. I could feel something there. Not see it, not quite, but the air was different in that spot. Denser, colder, like something was occupying space without being visible. "What do you want?" I whispered. The breathing sound again. That wet, wrong breathing. Then silence. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the empty space where I felt the presence. When I reached the far edge of the clearing, I turned and ran. Really ran this time, not caring about conserving energy or watching my footing. I needed distance. I ran for 20 minutes straight, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. I didn't hear footsteps behind me anymore. Maybe I'd outrun it. Maybe it had given up. I finally slowed to a walk, then stopped, leaning against a tree to catch my breath. That's when I heard them again, right behind me. So close I should have been able to feel breath on my neck. I whipped around. Nothing there. But the sound was unmistakable, breathing, right where a person's mouth would be if someone was standing 6 inches from my face. I ran again. This pattern continued for hours. I'd run, think I'd lost it, stop to rest, and the footsteps would resume. Always the same distance behind me. Always matching my pace. The fog never lifted, even though it should have burned off by midday. Around what I thought was 2 p.m., I started taking more photos. Every 10 minutes, I'd hold my phone over my shoulder and snap a picture without looking. I took maybe 40 photos total over the next 2 hours. My battery was draining fast. The cold and the camera use were killing it. But I needed documentation. I needed proof that this was happening. By 4 p.m., I reached Double Spring Gap Shelter, my planned stopping point. There were 2 other hikers there, a couple in their 40s, setting up their tent. I've never been so happy to see other people in my life. "Thank God," I gasped, stumbling into the shelter area. "There's something on the trail, something following me." They looked concerned. "Are you okay? You look exhausted. Did you pass anyone on the trail, coming from Klingman's Dome?" They shook their heads. "We came up from the other direction, haven't seen anyone all day. Why?" "Something's been following me. For 8 miles. I can hear it, but I can't see it." They exchanged glances, the kind of look that said they thought I was dehydrated or hysterical. "The fog can play tricks," the woman said gently. "Sounds echo weird up here." "No," I insisted. "This wasn't an echo, it was—" I pulled out my phone. "I took photos. Let me show you." My hands shook as I opened my photo gallery and started scrolling through the images I'd taken over my shoulder. The first 10 were just fog, an empty trail. Then I saw it. In the 11th photo, there was something in the fog. Not clear, not defined, but a darker shape in the mist. Roughly human-sized, but wrong proportions. Too tall, too thin, limbs at slightly wrong angles. The couple leaned in to look. "That's probably just a trick of the light," the man said uncertainly. I scrolled to the next photo. The shape was closer, more defined now. I could see what might have been arms, or too many arms, hanging at wrong angles. Something that might have been a head, but tilted wrong, like a neck that bent too far. The next photo, closer still. Now I could see details that made my stomach turn. The limbs were wrong because there were too many of them. Not 4 limbs like a person, but 6, maybe 7. All approximately where arms and legs should be, but overlapping, tangled together. The head was elongated, featureless, just a smooth oval shape. "Jesus," the woman whispered. I kept scrolling, my heart pounding. Each photo showed it progressively closer. By the 20th photo, it was maybe 10 feet behind me. By the 30th, 5 feet. The last photo I'd taken, the 40th one, was the worst. It was right behind me. So close that if it had been solid, it would have been touching me. I could see it in detail now. Those multiple limbs, all moving in sync, trying to mimic walking. The smooth head tilted forward, like it was looking down at me. And the worst part, there was something like a mouth, a vertical slit that ran the length of where a face should be, slightly open. The couple stepped back from my phone, their faces pale. "What the hell is that?" the man asked. "I don't know, but it followed me for 8 miles. The sound never got closer, but it was getting closer. The photos prove it." The woman pulled out her own phone. "I'm calling the ranger station. This needs to be reported." While she made the call, I scrolled through the photos again, zooming in on details. In the final photo, the one where it was right behind me, I noticed something else. The ground around it looked wrong, distorted, like I was seeing it through warped glass. And there were marks in the leaves, displacement patterns that didn't match human footprints. Too many of them, overlapping, like those multiple limbs had all been touching the ground. The ranger, who arrived 2 hours later, took my statement and copied all my photos. He was professional, but clearly disturbed. He told me this wasn't the first report of something following hikers in the fog near Klingman's Dome. There had been 3 other incidents in the past 5 years, all with similar details. Footsteps that matched pace, multiple overlapping sounds, feeling of presence in the fog. "Did anyone else get photos?" I asked. He shook his head. "You're the first. Usually people are too scared to think of documentation. This is significant." "What is it?" "We don't know. The Cherokee have stories about things that live in the fog, spirits that mimic humans to get close to them. Some of the old-timers call it the follower. Says it only appears in dense fog at high elevations. It matches your pace because it's learning from you, studying how humans move. If you let it get too close." He trailed off. "What happens if it gets too close?" "According to the stories, it tries to overlay itself on you, possess you, replace you. We're not sure. All we know is that people who report feeling it touch them, they're never quite right. Afterward, they move differently, talk differently, like something's riding in their skin." I looked at my last photo again, at that thing inches behind me, its vertical mouth slightly open. In the picture, I could see into that opening now. It wasn't empty. There were shapes inside, suggestions of other faces, other forms, all compressed together like it was made of everyone it had ever caught. I never hiked that section again. I still hike, but never alone, never in fog, and never at Klingman's Dome. The ranger told me I was lucky. I'd stopped to rest at the shelter right before it would have closed the final distance. 5 more minutes on the trail, and it would have caught me. Sometimes, I still hear footsteps behind me, even on city streets, even in broad daylight. I spin around, and there's nothing there. My therapist says it's PTSD, hypervigilance from a traumatic experience. Maybe she's right. But sometimes, when I check my phone's photos from a normal day out, I see something in the background of my selfies. Something tall and thin with too many limbs, always about 20 feet back, always watching. And I know it's still following me, waiting for the next foggy day, the next moment when I'm alone and the visibility drops, and it can finally close that last 3 feet of distance. If you hike Klingman's Dome, check the forecast. If fog is predicted, stay off the trail. And if you're already up there when it rolls in, if you hear footsteps behind you that match your pace exactly, don't stop. Don't slow down. Don't try to see what's following you. Just get to shelter as fast as you can and pray you make it before it closes the distance. Because once it touches you, once those too many limbs wrap around you in the fog, you won't be alone in your own skin anymore. One moment I was checking my watch on Dragon's Tooth Trail, 9:15 a.m., perfect hiking weather, full phone battery, and the next moment it was 9 p.m. and I was standing 15 miles away in terrain that should have taken 2 days to reach. 12 hours of my life just vanished, and my fitness tracker says my heart stopped beating for all of them. I'm Roland, a software engineer from Charlotte, and I approach everything in life with logic and data. I track my runs, monitor my sleep, quantify my productivity. So when I planned a day hike on Dragon's Tooth Trail in Virginia, I had every detail mapped out. Start time, estimated pace, waypoints, backup plans. The trail is only 4.6 miles round trip with some technical rock scrambling near the summit. Nothing I couldn't handle. I'd done harder hikes. I expected to be back at my car by 2 p.m., maybe 3 p.m. if I took a long lunch break at the top. I started exactly on schedule at 8:47 a.m. The trailhead was nearly empty. Just one other car in the lot. Perfect. I love solo hiking because I can set my own pace, stop when I want, think without interruption. The first mile was easy, a gradual incline through hardwood forest. I checked my fitness tracker at the 1 mile mark. 9:03 a.m., heart rate 118 BPM, 847 steps. Everything normal. The trail got steeper as I approached the rock scramble section. This is what Dragon's Tooth is famous for. A dramatic rock formation that requires using your hands, pulling yourself up over boulders, navigating narrow ledges. I'd watched YouTube videos to prepare. I knew what to expect. At 9:12 a.m., I stopped to take off my fleece jacket. It was warming up, and I knew the scramble would get me sweating. I stuffed the jacket in my pack, took a drink of water, checked my phone. Full battery, 100%. Good signal. I snapped a quick photo of the trail ahead, the rocks getting more dramatic. I looked at my watch, 9:15 a.m. Then I blinked, and it was dark. Not twilight, not dusk, full night. Stars overhead. The temperature had dropped at least 30 degrees. I was standing in the middle of a forest, but not the forest I'd been in. The trees were different, thicker, older. The ground beneath my feet was different, softer, covered in moss. I spun around, my headlamp clicking on automatically. When had I put on my headlamp? Nothing looked familiar. No trail markers, no blazes, no rock formations. Just dense, old-growth forest in every direction. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. 9 p.m. Battery 100%. That was impossible. 12 hours had passed, but my battery hadn't drained at all, and I'd been in full sun. The battery should have dropped at least 10% just from the heat. I checked my GPS location. My hands went numb. According to the GPS, I was 15.3 miles from Dragon's Tooth Trail, deep in the Jefferson National Forest, in an area marked as wilderness, with no trails nearby. The nearest marked trail was 3.2 miles away. This didn't make sense. I'd been standing on the trail taking off my jacket. That was seconds ago, wasn't it? I checked my fitness tracker, the one that monitors everything continuously. Steps, 14 and then 47. I'd started the day at 0, so I'd walked 14,000 steps, roughly 7 miles. But I had no memory of any of it past the moment I checked my watch at 9:15 a.m. Heart rate data made my stomach drop. From 8:47 a.m. to 9:15 a.m., my heart rate showed normal patterns. 80s at rest, 110s, 120s during hiking, spiking to 140s on steep sections. Normal. Then from 9:15 a.m. to 9 p.m., 12 hours, my heart rate showed as 0, a flat line, dead. But my step counter showed continuous movement during those same hours. I'd walked 7 miles while my heart wasn't beating. I sat down hard on a fallen log, trying to breathe, trying to think. This wasn't possible. None of this was possible. I checked my pack. My fleece jacket was gone, the one I'd just taken off. My water bottle was nearly empty, but I'd filled it that morning and only taken 1 sip. My trail snacks were gone, wrappers missing, like I'd eaten them without noticing. I had new scratches on my hands and arms that hadn't been there before. My boots were muddy, covered in a reddish clay I hadn't walked through. There were burrs stuck to my pants from plants I hadn't passed. My body had been active for 12 hours, had walked 7 miles through terrain I didn't remember, had eaten, drank water, navigated obstacles, all while my heart apparently wasn't beating and I had no conscious awareness. I pulled up my phone's photo gallery, hands shaking. The last photo I remembered taking was at 9:14 a.m., the trail ahead before the rock scramble. The next photo in the gallery was time-stamped 9:47 a.m. I opened it. It was a selfie of me, but I didn't remember taking it. In the photo, I was standing in a forest, smiling slightly, like I was on a pleasant hike. But my eyes looked wrong. The expression was off. It looked like me, but not quite. Like someone who'd studied my face and was imitating it without quite understanding how the muscles should move. The next photo, 10:23 a.m., another selfie. Same weird expression. My smile was wider but wrong. Too many teeth showing, the corners of my mouth pulled back too far. 11:15 a.m., another selfie. This time I wasn't smiling. I was staring directly at the camera with no expression at all. Behind me in the photo, the forest looked darker than it should have been at 11 a.m. I scrolled faster. There were dozens of photos. Every 30 to 45 minutes, a selfie. All of me, all with slightly wrong expressions, all in forests that got progressively darker and stranger. In the 2:30 p.m. photo, the trees behind me had no leaves, even though it was October, and plenty of trees still had foliage. In the 4:45 p.m. photo, I was standing in front of what looked like a cave entrance I definitely didn't remember. The 6:30 p.m. photo made me drop my phone. In it, I wasn't alone. There was someone standing behind me. Or something. Tall, impossibly thin, with proportions that didn't quite make sense. It was blurred, like it had moved during the shot, but I could make out a vague human shape that was fundamentally wrong. The last photo was at 8:47 p.m., 13 minutes ago according to my current time. In it, I was standing exactly where I was now, in front of this fallen log. But in the photo, my eyes were completely black, not dilated pupils, completely black from edge to edge. I looked at my hands, holding the phone. They were shaking. They looked normal. I opened my phone's camera in selfie mode to see my own face. My eyes were normal. Hazel, like always, not black. I checked the photo metadata. All the photos had correct GPS coordinates, showing a wandering path through the forest that made no logical sense. Doubling back, going in circles, occasionally jumping miles in impossible ways. And all of them showed my heart rate in the metadata as 0. I tried to call 911. No signal now, even though I'd had signal at 9:15 a.m. I tried texting my emergency contact. Message failed. I was completely alone in a forest I shouldn't be in, with 12 hours of missing memory and evidence that something else had been controlling my body. I made a decision. I pulled up my GPS, marked my car's location at the Dragon's Tooth trailhead, and started navigating toward it. It showed 15.8 miles away. At a good pace, pushing hard, I could make it by dawn. I hiked through the night, following the GPS, checking it obsessively. My fitness tracker continued recording. Heart rate back to normal now. 140s from the stress and fast pace. Steps accumulating. Everything working as it should. But every 30 minutes, my phone would make the camera shutter sound. I'd check it, and there would be a new photo I didn't take. Each one a selfie with that wrong expression, those not quite right features. And in each one, that tall, blurred figure was visible in the background, getting progressively closer. By 3:30 a.m., according to the photos I wasn't taking, the figure was right behind me in each shot. By 5 a.m., it appeared to be touching my shoulder. By 6:15 a.m., as dawn started to break, the photo showed it was directly in front of me, facing me, even though I was taking a selfie, like it and I were occupying the same space. I reached my car at 6:47 a.m., exactly 12 hours from when I'd parked it the previous morning. I'd hiked over 20 miles through the night. I was exhausted, terrified, but I was back. I got in, locked the doors, started the engine, checked my phone one more time. One last photo had been taken at 6:46 a.m., 1 minute ago. In it, I was sitting in my car behind the wheel, but I wasn't alone in the driver's seat. That tall figure was sitting in the same space I was occupying, overlaid on me like we were merging. I drove straight to the hospital, told them I'd had a blackout, lost time, needed to be checked. They ran every test, CT scan, MRI, blood work, EKG. Everything came back normal, perfectly healthy. No signs of seizure, stroke, drug use, Nothing that would explain a 12-hour blackout. But when they did the EKG, the technician called the doctor in. They ran it 3 times. Each time for exactly 12 seconds, the reading showed my heart stop completely, then start again. They couldn't explain it. They wanted to keep me for observation. I refused. I just wanted to go home. I deleted all the photos from that day, every single one. Deleted them from my phone, from my cloud backup, from everywhere I could find them. But my fitness tracker data is permanent, synced to servers I can't access. And according to that data, yesterday, from 9:15 a.m. to 9:00 p.m., I walked 47 steps, while my heart rate was 0. I climbed 3,000 feet of elevation while dead. I burned 2,400 calories without a heartbeat. Something took control of my body for 12 hours. It walked me deep into the wilderness. It took photos to document the experience. It was teaching itself how to be me, how to move like me, how to make my face form expressions. And I think it's still here. Because sometimes, when I'm not thinking about it, I'll notice my hand moving in a way I didn't intend. Or I'll catch my reflection and my smile will be just slightly wrong. Or I'll check my phone and find a photo I don't remember taking. Just a quick selfie, my expression almost normal, but not quite. My fitness tracker still shows my heart stop for exactly 12 seconds every day at random times. And during those 12 seconds, my step count continues. I'm walking, moving, living, while my heart isn't beating. I don't think I came back alone from those woods. I think something came back with me, riding inside my skin, learning how to be human. And every day, those 12-second episodes last a little longer. Yesterday, my heart stopped for 45 seconds. I was at work, in a meeting, and apparently I kept talking, kept participating, while my heart wasn't beating. My coworker told me later I seemed fine, just a little off. My smile was weird, he said, too wide. I'm writing this down while I still can, while I'm still mostly me. If you're planning to hike Dragon's Tooth Trail, be careful. If you check your watch and then blink and hours have passed. If you find photos you don't remember taking. If your fitness tracker shows your heart stopping while your body keeps moving, get help immediately. Don't wait like I did. Don't convince yourself it was just a weird glitch, because whatever is in those woods, whatever takes you during those missing hours, it doesn't fully let go. It comes back with you, and eventually during one of those episodes when your heart stops, I don't think it's going to start again. I can feel it happening right now. My chest feels strange. My vision is getting blurry. My fitness tracker just buzzed, heart rate 0, but my hands are still typing. My body is still moving. It's taking over. And I can't. We heard it at the same time. A child's voice crying deep in the woods, maybe 200 yards off the trail. My husband Sam looked at me, and without a word, we both knew we couldn't just keep walking. I'm Yara, and this happened last spring when Sam and I were hiking through Cheaha State Park in Alabama, near the southern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. We'd been married 3 years, together for 8, and we had that kind of relationship where you don't always need words. One look, and we knew what the other was thinking. That connection, that unspoken communication, is probably what saved our lives that day. But it's also what led us to make the worst decision we've ever made. We'd started the hike around 10 a.m., planning a moderate 8-mile loop through some of the prettiest terrain in Alabama. Cheaha Mountain is the highest point in the state at 2,407 feet, and the views are spectacular. The trail we chose was well marked, moderately trafficked, nothing extreme, perfect for a relaxed Saturday hike. The weather was ideal, mid-70s, light breeze, partly cloudy. We'd been hiking for about 2 hours, just enjoying each other's company, taking photos, talking about nothing important. That's what I loved about hiking with Sam. We could be completely comfortable in silence or talk for hours. No pressure, no agenda, just being together. We were maybe 4 miles in when we heard it. A child crying. Not a distressed animal, not a bird. Definitely a human child. A young one, maybe 4 or 5 years old based on the voice. The crying was heartbreaking, that kind of sobbing that comes from real fear and pain. Sam and I stopped walking at exactly the same moment. Our eyes met. I saw my own thoughts reflected in his face. A child was in trouble. Someone's baby was lost in the woods, hurt, terrified. We had to help. "Hello," Sam called out toward the sound. "Are you okay? We're here to help." The crying continued, maybe even got louder. It sounded like it was coming from thick forest off to our right, down a slope into denser vegetation. No trail in that direction, just wilderness. "Mommy," the voice cried. "Mommy, where are you? I'm scared. It hurts." My heart broke. I'm not a mother, but I have nieces and nephews. I know that sound. Pure, innocent fear. I took a step off the trail toward the voice. Sam grabbed my arm gently. "Wait," he said quietly. "Something feels wrong." "It's a child, Sam. We can't just leave them." "I know, but—" He trailed off, frowning. "The voice isn't moving. A scared kid would be wandering looking for help. This is staying in one spot." I listened more carefully. He was right. The crying was coming from the exact same location, not moving at all. But maybe the child was hurt, unable to move. "We have to check," I said. "What if they're really hurt?" Sam nodded slowly. "Okay. But we stay together. And if anything feels off, we turn back immediately. Deal?" "Deal." We pulled out our phones, marked our location on GPS, and headed off-trail toward the crying. The sound was maybe 100 yards away, but the terrain was rough. Steep slope, thick undergrowth, lots of obstacles. We picked our way carefully, calling out as we went. "We're coming," I shouted. "Hold on, sweetie. Help is coming." The crying continued, unchanging. Same intensity, same rhythm, like a loop playing. That should have been our second warning sign, but we were so focused on helping that we didn't process it. After about 10 minutes of difficult hiking, we should have reached the source of the sound. But it seemed farther away now. Still the same volume, but definitely not closer. "Mommy, help me," the voice called. "Please don't leave me. It's dark and I'm scared." Sam stopped. That's the same sentence it said 5 minutes ago. Exactly the same words. I realized he was right. The crying had variations, sobs, sniffles, but the actual words were repeating. "Mommy, where are you? Mommy, help me. Please don't leave me. It hurts." The same 4 phrases cycling. "We should go back," Sam said, his voice tight. But before we could turn around, the crying changed location. It was now ahead of us again, deeper into the forest. And this time, it sounded closer. "Please help me," the voice called. And now it sounded different. Younger, more desperate. "I'm lost. I can't find my parents." We looked at each other. This wasn't right. The voice had changed pitch, changed age, like someone was adjusting it to find the right frequency to hook us. "We're leaving," Sam said firmly, taking my hand. "Now." We turned to head back to the trail. The crying stopped. Complete silence. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just dead, heavy silence that felt wrong. Then the laughing started. Not a child's laugh. An adult laugh, deep and cruel, coming from multiple directions, surrounding us, and underneath the laughing, that child's voice again, but distorted now, wrong. "Come play with me. Come find me. Don't you want to help?" Sam and I ran. We crashed through the undergrowth, sliding down slopes, pushing through bushes, heading toward where we thought the trail should be. Behind us, the laughter followed, staying just close enough to hear, and that child's voice kept calling, getting more distorted, more wrong with each repetition. "Help me, help me, help me, help me," overlapping, multiple voices now, all slightly different pitches, all saying the same thing at once. I tripped over a root and went down hard. Sam hauled me up immediately, never letting go of my hand. We kept running. The forest seemed different now, darker, thicker, like the trees were closing in. I couldn't see any familiar landmarks. We should have reached the trail by now. Sam pulled out his phone. GPS says the trail is right ahead, maybe 50 feet. We pushed forward, branches scratching our faces and arms. And then suddenly we broke through the underbrush onto the trail. Actual real marked trail. We collapsed on the path, gasping for air. The laughing stopped. The child's voice stopped. Normal forest sounds returned. Birds, breeze through leaves, the everyday soundscape we'd been hiking through all morning. What the hell was that? I gasped. Sam shook his head, still breathing hard. I don't know. But we need to get out of here. We started hiking fast, almost jogging, heading back the way we'd come. We didn't speak, just focused on putting distance between us and whatever that was. After about a mile, we passed another couple hiking toward us. They looked normal, friendly, like regular hikers. Hey, the man called out. Did you guys hear a kid crying back there? We're trying to find them. Sam and I stopped. The woman with him nodded. We heard it about 10 minutes ago. Sounds like a little boy, maybe lost. We're heading that way to help. Don't, Sam said sharply. Don't go off trail. There's no child. It's something else. They looked at us like we were crazy. We can't just leave a child in the woods, the woman said, the same thing I'd said to Sam earlier. There is no child, I insisted. It's a trap. It lures you off trail and... I didn't know how to finish that sentence. And what? We heard it, the man said firmly. A kid crying for his mom. We're going to help. He turned to his companion. Come on. They walked past us, heading deeper on the trail. Sam and I looked at each other. We could try to stop them, but what could we say that wouldn't sound insane? We should report this, I said. To rangers, someone. We hiked out quickly, reached our car around 2 p.m. We drove straight to the ranger station at the park entrance. The ranger on duty listened to our story with an expression I couldn't read. Not dismissive, not surprised, just resigned. You heard the crying child, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. And then laughing and, you went off trail to help, she continued. Yes, but we turned back when you realized it wasn't moving, wasn't real. She pulled out a folder from her desk, opened it. You're the 7th report this year, 19th since 2019. Sam and I stared at her. What is it? Sam asked. The ranger shook her head. We don't know. Local Cherokee have stories about something they call the voice that hunts, a spirit or entity that mimics human distress to lure people off trails. Modern reports started in the 1960s, but the stories go back centuries. It's always a child's voice, always crying or calling for parents, always stops people who are together, in groups, never targets solo hikers. Why groups? I asked. Our theory? Solo hikers are more cautious, more likely to report strange sounds to rangers instead of investigating. But couples, families, groups, they feel safer. They trust their numbers. They think they can help, so they go off trail. What happens to people who don't come back? Sam asked quietly. The ranger was silent for a moment. Since 2019, 4 people have gone missing in this park. All of them were last seen by other hikers who reported them heading off trail toward a child crying. We find their cars, their phones and wallets left in the vehicles, but never them. Search and rescue finds nothing. No remains, no clothing, no signs of struggle. They just vanish. I felt cold despite the warm afternoon. The couple we passed, they were heading toward it. The ranger's face went pale. When? Maybe 45 minutes ago. She grabbed her radio immediately, calling for search and rescue, giving descriptions, coordinating response. Within minutes, rangers were mobilizing. They found the couple. This time, they'd gone about a quarter mile off trail before something, they couldn't explain what, made them stop and turn back. They said the forest had gotten wrong. Trees too thick, light too dim, complete silence. They'd felt like they were being herded deeper, and they'd had enough sense to run. They were lucky. Like we were lucky. The ranger told us the pattern. People who turn back early, who trust their instincts that something is wrong, they make it out. People who push forward, who keep trying to find the source of the crying, who ignore the warning signs. Those are the ones who disappear. Sam and I gave full statements, handed over our GPS tracks, our timeline, everything we could remember. The ranger thanked us and gave us one piece of advice. If you hike here again, if you hike anywhere in these mountains, and you hear a child crying off trail, do not investigate. Call rangers immediately, give location, but do not go off trail. Whatever it is, it's been doing this for a very long time, and it's very good at exploiting our instinct to help children. We left the park that afternoon and haven't been back, but I think about it constantly. About that voice, so perfectly calibrated to break your heart. About how many people have heard it over the centuries. About the 4 people who are still missing, who followed that crying into the deep woods and never came back. What haunts me most is this. We almost became number 5 and 6. If Sam hadn't noticed the voice wasn't moving, if we'd pushed just a little deeper, if we hadn't run when we did, would anyone have found us? Or would we still be in those woods, lost in a forest that got darker and thicker and stranger the farther you went, while something laughed and mimicked a child's voice and waited for the next helpful hikers to pass by? I don't know what it is. A spirit, an entity, something old that learned humans respond to children in distress. All I know is that if you're hiking in Alabama, if you're anywhere in the southern Appalachians, and you hear a child crying in the woods, don't go looking. Don't trust your instinct to help, because that instinct is exactly what it's counting on. And if you don't make it back, no one will ever find you. The shelter guest book should have been comforting. Pages of hikers' stories, trail advice, jokes, and drawings from people who'd passed through safely. Instead, I found a pattern that made my blood run cold. Every 3rd entry for the past 20 years mentioned seeing the man in the plaid shirt at exactly 2:47 a.m., and I'd just become the 3rd signature this month. My name is Abdil, and I'm a graduate student studying folklore and Appalachian culture, so I'd heard plenty of trail legends before. I approached them academically. Interesting stories, cultural artifacts, nothing more. I didn't believe in ghosts or curses or supernatural entities. I believed in pattern recognition, coincidence, and the human tendency to find meaning in random events. That rational worldview lasted right up until the night I spent at Laurel Fork Shelter in Tennessee, when I learned that some patterns aren't coincidence at all. I'd been section hiking the AT for my thesis research, documenting trail culture and the stories hikers tell. Shelters were perfect for this. The guest books were gold mines of folklore in the making. I'd photographed dozens of them, logged entries, tracked recurring themes, urban legends about the trail evolving in real time. Laurel Fork Shelter was remote, about 6 miles from the nearest road access. I arrived around 5 p.m. on a Wednesday in early November, past peak season. I had the shelter to myself, which was perfect. I could spread out my notes, record voice memos, really dig into the guest book without feeling like I was monopolizing a resource other hikers needed. The shelter itself was standard. 3-sided wooden structure with a raised sleeping platform, a fire pit out front, bare cables for food storage. Well maintained, nothing creepy about it in daylight. The surrounding forest was beautiful, the kind of deep wilderness quiet that's so rare now. I set up my sleeping bag, hung my food, started a small fire as the sun set. Then I pulled out the shelter's guest book, a thick notebook, probably 3 or 4 years worth of entries. I settled in with my headlamp and started reading from the beginning, taking notes on my laptop as I went. The entries were typical at first. Trail names, dates, mileage, weather reports, jokes about aching feet and instant ramen, advice about water sources, drawings of hikers and animals, the usual shelter book content. Then I noticed something odd. Every few pages someone would mention seeing someone at night. Woke up at 2:47 a.m., saw a man in a plaid shirt standing by the fire pit, watching the shelter. Didn't say anything, just watched. Figured it was another hiker. Went back to sleep. I flipped forward. 3 entries later. Had weird dreams. Woke at exactly 2:47 according to my watch. Thought I saw someone outside, but when I looked again, nobody there. I started marking these entries, going through the entire book. The pattern was unmistakable. Every third entry, not every third day, but every third person who signed the book mentioned something at 2:47 a.m. Sometimes the man in the plaid shirt. Sometimes just a feeling of being watched. Sometimes waking up at that exact time for no reason. I went back and checked dates. This pattern went back through the entire book. 3 years of entries. I asked to see the previous guest books. Shelters usually keep old ones in a plastic bin. The pattern continued. 4 years, 7 years, 10 years. I pulled out my laptop and cross-referenced with my photographs of guest books from other shelters. Laurel Fork was unique. No other shelter showed this kind of consistent pattern. My academic brain was fascinated. This was exactly the kind of thing my thesis was about. How modern folklore spreads and reinforces itself. People read about the 2:47 a.m. phenomenon. Then they're primed to wake up at that time, or to interpret any nighttime disturbance through that lens. Self-fulfilling prophecy, confirmation bias, the power of suggestion. But my gut, the part of me that wasn't rational, the part I usually ignored, felt uneasy. The entries were too consistent, too specific, and many of them were from 2:47 a.m. exactly before the person would have read the guest book to know about the pattern. I checked my watch, 8:34 p.m. I'd been reading for over 2 hours. I looked at the guest book's last page. The most recent entry was from 3 days ago. Before that, one from a week ago. I counted back. I was the third person to sign in this month. According to the pattern, I would see something at 2:47 a.m. I laughed at myself. This was ridiculous. I was literally studying how these beliefs spread, and here I was, getting spooked by the very phenomenon I was researching. I decided to treat it as a perfect opportunity. I'd stay awake, document everything, prove that nothing supernatural was happening. I made notes until about 11 p.m., then tried to sleep. I set an alarm for 2:45 a.m., 2 minutes before the pattern time. If I was already awake and alert, I could observe objectively, not half asleep and suggestible. I dozed fitfully, jerking awake at small sounds, wind in the trees, an owl calling, my own sleeping bag rustling. When my alarm went off at 2:45 a.m., I was almost relieved. Time to put this legend to rest. I sat up, turned on my headlamp, checked my watch. 2:45 a.m. exactly. The shelter was dark except for my light. The fire had died hours ago. The forest outside was silent, that deep, absolute silence of wilderness in the dead of night. I waited, watching the shelter entrance, the fire pit area, the surrounding trees visible in my headlamp beam. My watch ticked to 2:46 a.m. 1 minute to go. I felt silly, sitting here like I was ghost hunting. I almost laughed at myself. This was going to make a great chapter in my thesis. The subjective experience of expecting supernatural phenomena. 2:47 a.m. Nothing happened. I waited. Still nothing. The forest stayed silent. No mysterious figure appeared. No strange feelings. Just me, alone in a shelter, wide awake at an arbitrary time because I'd let folklore affect my behavior. I was about to turn off my headlamp and go back to sleep when I noticed something. The temperature had dropped. Dramatically. I could see my breath suddenly, even though it hadn't been that cold when I'd set my alarm. The shelter felt 20 degrees colder than it had 2 minutes ago. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not in the shelter, outside near the fire pit. Slow, measured steps on fallen leaves. Someone was out there. "Hello?" I called, keeping my voice steady. "Is someone there?" The footsteps stopped. No response. I grabbed my flashlight, more powerful than my headlamp, and shined it toward the fire pit. A man stood there, maybe 30 feet away, wearing a plaid shirt, red and black flannel. He was just standing there, perfectly still, facing the shelter, facing me. "Hey," I called. "You okay? Kinda late to be hiking." He didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there. The beam of my flashlight showed him clearly. Average height, average build, couldn't make out his face clearly at this distance, but the plaid shirt was unmistakable. My heart was pounding now. "Do you need help?" Still nothing. The cold was intense now, painful. My hands were shaking, and not just from adrenaline. I did something stupid. I stood up and walked to the edge of the shelter platform, getting closer. "Sir, are you lost?" He moved then, turned slightly, like he was looking at me more directly, and I realized with horror that I couldn't see his face because he didn't have features. Where his face should have been, there was just darkness. Not shadow, darkness, like a void. I stumbled backwards, tripping over my sleeping bag. My flashlight beam wavered. When I got it steady again, he was closer. Maybe 20 feet now. I hadn't seen him move. He was just closer. "Stay back," I said, my voice cracking. Academic detachment was gone. This was primal fear. He tilted his head. That featureless void where his face should be seemed to be studying me. Then he raised one arm, slowly, pointing at me. The cold became unbearable. Ice was forming on the inside of the shelter, crystallizing on the wooden beams. My breath came out in clouds of vapor. I couldn't feel my fingers. I grabbed my phone. No signal, but the camera worked. I took a photo. The flash lit up the clearing. He was gone, just vanished. The clearing was empty, but the cold remained. I checked my watch. 2:51 a.m. 4 minutes had passed since 2:47. I looked at the photo I'd just taken. The clearing was empty in it too. No man, no plaid shirt, nothing. But there was something else. The ground where he'd been standing showed a shadow, a human-shaped depression in the frost that was forming on the grass. A shadow with no body casting it. The temperature started rising, slowly returning to normal. By 3 a.m., the ice on the shelter beams had melted. By 3:15, I could feel my hands again. I didn't sleep. I sat there until dawn, every light I had turned on, watching the clearing. Nothing else happened. At first light, I packed up and hiked out as fast as I could. Before I left, I signed the guest book. November 3rd, Abdeel 6 miles. Saw the man in the plaid shirt at 2:47 a.m. I thought I was studying folklore. I was wrong. I was the third entry that month. I'd seen it at 2:47 a.m., just like the pattern predicted. When I got back to civilization, I researched Laurel Fork Shelter's history. I found an old newspaper article from 1962. A hiker had died there, hypothermia, found frozen in his sleeping bag on a November morning, even though the temperature that night had been mild. He'd been wearing a red and black plaid shirt. His name was never released, but the article mentioned he'd been checking his watch repeatedly in the hours before death, telling other hikers it had stopped at 2:47 and he couldn't fix it. The pattern wasn't people reading the guest book and imagining things. The pattern was something announcing itself, letting people know it was coming. Every third person, every time, at 2:47 a.m., the exact moment this man's time stopped in 1962. I changed my thesis topic. I'm not studying how folklore spreads anymore. I'm studying why some stories persist, because some of them aren't stories. Some of them are warnings. If you're planning to stay at Laurel Fork Shelter, check the guest book, count the entries. If you're the third person to sign in that month, don't stay. Hike out, hike on, camp somewhere else. Because at 2:47 a.m., he's going to come. He's going to stand outside in his plaid shirt, with that void where his face should be. And the cold he brings, the cold that killed him in 1962, it's still looking for someone to share it with. I was lucky. I left at dawn, but sometimes, when I wake up at night, I check my watch, and if it says 2:47, I turn on every light and wait for the cold to pass. Because now I'm part of the pattern too, and patterns I've learned don't break. They just keep repeating, every third person, every 2:47 a.m. forever. I've hiked hundreds of miles using nothing but a compass and topographic maps, never once getting turned around. But on Hangover Lead Trail in North Carolina, I walked in a perfectly straight line according to my compass for 6 hours and kept arriving back at the same distinctive rock formation, and each time I returned, I found fresh marks from other hikers who were trapped in the same impossible loop right alongside me. My name is Corey, and I'm a wilderness survival instructor. I teach orienteering, map reading, compass navigation, skills that have kept me and countless students safe in the backcountry for 15 years. I trust my instruments because I understand how they work. Magnetic north, declination adjustments, triangulation. These aren't mysteries to me, they're tools, reliable and predictable. Or at least they were, until I hiked Hangover Lead Trail and discovered that some places don't follow the rules of normal geography. It was late October, a solo training hike to scout a new route for my advanced navigation course. Hangover Lead is a remote section of trail in North Carolina, known for its challenging terrain and frequent fog. Perfect for teaching students how to navigate when visibility is limited. I wanted to map out waypoints, identify good teaching spots, document potential hazards. I started at the northern trailhead around 8 a.m. Weather was overcast but stable, temperature in the low 50s. I had my GPS as backup, but I was primarily navigating old school, compass and topo map, the way I teach. Technology fails, batteries die. Basic skills are what keep you alive. The trail was well marked initially, standard white blazes on trees every 100 yards. The terrain was challenging but manageable, steep sections, rocky outcroppings, dense forest. Exactly what I expected from the trail description. About 2 hours in, I came to a distinctive landmark, a massive boulder split down the middle, creating a natural archway maybe 8 feet tall. The topo map showed it, marked as Split Rock. I noted the time, took a bearing for my next waypoint, and continued north. The trail became less distinct after Split Rock. Blazes were farther apart, sometimes hard to spot. No problem. I had my compass bearing and knew the terrain features to watch for. I was heading for a ridge line about 3 miles north. I hiked for about 45 minutes, making good time despite the terrain. Then I saw it ahead, Split Rock. The same distinctive boulder, the same archway. I stopped, confused. I'd been walking north on a consistent bearing. I should be 3 miles from this spot. But there it was, unmistakable. Same moss pattern, same fallen log beside it, same everything. I checked my compass, still pointing north, same bearing I'd been following. I checked my map. According to my dead reckoning, I should be approaching the ridgeline, not back at Split Rock. I walked up to the boulder and examined it carefully. Definitely the same one. I'd scratched a small mark on it earlier with my knife, a habit from my military days, marking waypoints. The mark was there. Okay. Somehow I'd gotten turned around without realizing it. Maybe circled back south without noticing. It happens, even to experienced navigators, especially in dense forest where visual landmarks are limited. I recalibrated, took a fresh bearing, double-checked my map, marked Split Rock with a fresh scratch, 2 parallel lines this time, so I'd know if I came back again. Then I headed north, more carefully this time, checking my compass every few minutes. 45 minutes later, I arrived back at Split Rock. This wasn't possible. I'd been watching my compass constantly. I'd maintained a perfect bearing. The needle never wavered. I'd walked in a straight line. But there was my mark, 2 parallel scratches, and next to it, a third mark I hadn't made. A rough X carved into the rock. Fresh, the stone still light-colored where it had been scratched. Someone else was here. Someone else had marked the rock recently. "Hello," I called out. "Is anyone on the trail?" No response. Just wind in the trees and the distant call of a crow. I looked more carefully at the X. The cuts were fresh, maybe minutes old. Whoever made it was close by. But I hadn't seen or heard anyone. I pulled out my GPS, figuring it was time to rely on technology. The screen showed my location, right at Split Rock, but the track log was wrong. According to the GPS, I'd walked in a straight line north for 3.2 miles, then suddenly jumped back to Split Rock without any movement recorded in between. Like the GPS had glitched and skipped back to the starting point. I tried marking a waypoint. The GPS showed an error. Location already marked. I pulled up my waypoints. There was one marked at Split Rock, time-stamped from my current time, but I hadn't created it. My phone had no signal. The time showed 10:47 a.m., which meant I'd been hiking for less than 3 hours. That felt wrong, but I couldn't argue with my watch, which showed the same time. I made a decision. I marked Split Rock with a third scratch, 3 parallel lines, pulled out bright orange surveyor's tape from my pack, and tied it to a branch near the rock. Unmistakable. If I came back, I'd know immediately. Then I did something different. Instead of following my compass north, I walked east, perpendicular to my original bearing. Maybe the trail wasn't where the map said it was. Maybe there was a magnetic anomaly affecting my compass. Walking east would take me off the trail, but it would also break whatever pattern was happening. I walked for an hour, checking my compass constantly. I was heading due east, no deviation. The terrain got rougher. No trail now, just bushwhacking through dense forest. My GPS showed me moving east, track log recording every step. Then I saw orange through the trees ahead, my surveyor's tape, and Split Rock. I'd walk due east for an hour and come back to the same spot. But this time, there were more marks on the rock. My 3 parallel lines were there. The mysterious X was there. And now there were 4 more marks, a circle, a square, a wavy line, and hash marks. 7 different marks from 7 different people, all fresh, all recent, and 7 pieces of surveyor's tape tied to the same branch: orange, yellow, red, blue, green, white, pink, all fluttering in the breeze. I wasn't alone in this loop. 6 other people were trapped here, marking the rock each time they returned, and we were all cycling through the same impossible space without seeing each other. I pulled out my knife and carved a rough C next to my 3 lines, something uniquely identifiable. Then I sat down on the rock and thought. 7 people, all experienced enough to have compasses and GPS, all marking the rock, all presumably walking in straight lines and returning here. We were caught in some kind of spatial loop. Not just me making navigation errors. This was something wrong with the space itself. I examined the area more carefully. The forest looked normal. Trees, undergrowth, rocks. Nothing obviously strange, but I noticed something odd. There were no animal sounds, no birds, no squirrels, no insects, just silence and wind. I tried walking in a different direction, south, back the way I'd originally come. 30 minutes of hiking, and I was back at Split Rock. 8 pieces of tape now. 8 marks on the rock, including my C. I tried west. Same result. No matter which direction, no matter how carefully I navigated, I ended up back at Split Rock every 30 to 45 minutes. The sun wasn't moving. I checked my watch repeatedly. Still 10:47 a.m. Every time I checked, 10:47 a.m. Like time itself was looped along with the space. I tried different strategies, walking in a spiral, following a specific tree line, counting steps and maintaining precise bearings. Nothing worked. Split Rock was the center of a trap, and every path led back to it. By what should have been early afternoon, but was still 10:47 a.m., there were 15 marks on the rock, 15 pieces of surveyor's tape, 15 people trapped in this loop, all trying to escape, all failing. Some of the marks were starting to fade. The first X I'd seen wasn't fresh anymore. It was weathered, like it had been there for weeks, but I'd seen it carved fresh just hours ago. Time was wrong here in multiple ways. I found a scrap of paper wedged in a crack in the rock, protected from rain. A note in pencil. Day 7. Still can't escape. Food running low. If you find this, try walking at night. Haven't tested yet. Hoping darkness breaks the pattern. Day 7. Someone had been trapped here for a week. Were they still here, somewhere in the loop, just out of phase with me? How many people had been caught over the years? I decided to try the note's suggestion. I set up a minimal camp near Split Rock. No point hiking away when I'd just end up back here anyway. I rationed my food, drank from my water bottle sparingly. I waited for sunset, but sunset never came. The overcast sky stayed the same gray brightness, 10:47 a.m., forever. After what felt like hours of waiting, I tried walking again anyway. This time, I closed my eyes and walked for 10 minutes with my hand on a long stick dragging behind me to keep a straight line. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't at Split Rock. I was on a trail, a real trail with fresh blazes. And according to my GPS, I was 6 miles south of where I'd started that morning. I'd somehow exited the loop. My watch said 4:23 p.m. Time had jumped forward. My GPS track showed a straight line from Split Rock to my current location, but I had no memory of walking it with my eyes closed. I hiked out fast, not stopping, not looking back. When I reached the trailhead, my car was there. Normal world, normal time, normal everything. I reported the incident to the Park Service, showed them my GPS logs, the photos of the marked rock with 15 pieces of surveyor's tape. They listened politely, filed a report, and told me they'd investigate. A week later, they contacted me. They'd found Split Rock using my GPS coordinates. No marks on it, no surveyor's tape, just a boulder in the woods. But in the area around it, they found abandoned gear, backpacks, water bottles, camping equipment from multiple different time periods. Some of it was decades old. They asked if I wanted to lead them back there, help them understand what happened. I refused. I'm never going back to Hangover Lead Trail, because sometimes closing your eyes and walking blind is the only way to escape a trap. But I keep thinking about the others, the 14 people whose marks I saw on that rock. Did they figure it out? Did they escape? Or are they still there, walking in perfect straight lines that lead nowhere, trapped at 10:47 a.m. forever, adding new marks to a rock that resets itself when no one's looking? I don't teach navigation in North Carolina anymore. Some trails aren't meant to be mapped, and some places don't want to be found. Or more accurately, they don't want to let go once they've found you. If you found these Appalachian Trail stories as disturbing as I did, you're not alone. These mountains hold secrets that maps can't show, and compasses can't navigate. Subscribe to Haunted Fears and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next journey into the unexplained. Share your own trail experiences in the comments. Maybe you've encountered something similar. And remember, the next time you're hiking and something feels wrong, trust that instinct. Some paths lead home, others lead nowhere at all.